you've featured in is Heads Up against Nick Airball.
In hindsight, I'm very happy and thankful that it happened. It was incredibly stressful and felt really unnecessary. I wasn't quiet about any of that. Clips were very easy to come across, and it was very easy to take shots to HCL anytime I deemed necessary. People don't know this. When the Jack 4 thing happened, I was Vertucci's first phone call. It turned into an us versus them influence on the way the business was run. He treated it like a mob. It's all as a byproduct of me just saying truthful things. After months of just shit talking back and forth, Airball was really feeling himself. Eventually reached out to Doug to try to orchestrate a heads up match. I had never played heads up a single hand in my life outside of games breaking in the casino, kind of kicking the can down the road. Until one day he just showed up on Doug's podcast and he's throwing out a lot of buzzwords, scam, right? Like as if this guy is able to determine who's able to teach poker or not.
Hey guys, welcome back to Uncapped Poker Podcast. I'm here with my co-host Lucas. I'm Justin. We're both online MTT grinders from the state of New Jersey. Today we are joined by a very, very special guest, Matt Berkey, high stakes cash game pro who's also dabbled in tournaments and content creation. Please like and subscribe, comment. Let's jump into it. Matt, how are you doing today?
Can't complain. Had to push you guys back an hour. I had to go give a little blood at the doctor's office, but otherwise things are good.
Was it for a donation or are you just keeping?
No, I very routinely get blood work done. I dove headfirst into peptides probably like 8 years ago. So it's just become kind of my regiment to get blood work every 4 months or so, make sure everything's on par.
Do you do peptides to get like stronger?
So my initial experience with them was that I had an issue where I had never had blood work done in my adult life. But when I was like 31, maybe like 32, I guess, I was just coming out of knee surgery, and the post-op, I like wasn't recovering well. So I finally went and got blood work done, and my hormonal panel came back like pretty off for how healthy of a lifestyle I was living. My thyroid was like a little bit laggy. My testosterone levels were like quite low for a guy my age, and I had a good friend who his doctor was like pretty headfirst into this space. Worked with like a lot of UFC fighters, a lot of motocross people, and he put me in touch. He said, just go to him for a consult. You know, if anything's wrong, he'll send you to a specialist. But, you know, worst case scenario, you guys can start talking about like ways to improve this. So I went to him. He looked over my panels. He's like, okay, we can supplement a few things here, some natural thyroid, you know, maybe tweak your diet a little bit to see if we can get your levels up naturally. But there are a lot of these new peptides that are on the forefront. This is like, you know, maybe 10 years removed from the steroid era or the mislabeled steroid era of baseball, I would say, where, you know, Bonds and those guys were getting a lot of pushback for using HGH and things of that nature. So he kind of educated me on the space. I started taking HCG, which is a testosterone enhancer. They usually give it to men who are older, trying to preserve their fertility. And then I paired that with HGH at the time and just saw insane results. Everything leveled off, became very normal again. I started to educate myself more, got a little bit deeper into the regimens, and basically have just been working with him for the past decade or so.
Nice. I mean, you're a big baseball guy, right? How does it feel that Barry Bonds is not in the Hall of Fame?
I think it's like, I think it's a stain on the sport in the opposite direction that people believe. Like he's, in my opinion, the greatest to just ever do it, regardless of whatever enhancements he may have been taking. I think also like eventually we'll look back on that era and kind of scoff at the notion that they were using, you know, like peptides aren't what people think they are. Steroids are, of course, but steroids were legal in baseball for 50 some odd years. And then all of a sudden records start getting shattered and technology gets a little bit better. And now him, Clemens, and, you know, a handful of others who were maybe the best to ever do it are just kind of left out of the hall. I get it from a traditional standpoint, but I think at some point, probably long after he's dead, they'll rectify this.
Bonds is the most incredible baseball player I think anybody's ever seen. His numbers are ridiculous too. It's like, not to get too much in baseball, but it's what he had like a season where his on base percentage was like 700 or something crazy.
He had an OPS over 1,000 at least once, possibly more than once, because there was a season where he was walked over 200 times, which was like, I think it was something like 40% of his plate appearances he had been walked. And of those, I think like a third of them were intentional. So yeah, his slugging was obviously outrageous. Like the guy just didn't hit singles towards the end of his career. I think it's
home
like,
runs.
yeah, I think it's insane that like he got blackballed his last season. He obviously would have broken 800 if he had gotten another full season, maybe season and a half. I think his final season in the MLB, it's been a while since I looked at his stats, but I think he hit something like, I don't know, 23 home runs and batted like 280, which were career lows for him at that point, but still something you'd sign up for in a heartbeat when you're talking about a 41-year-old slugger who's just going to DH for your team, you know?
Yeah. Well, speaking of baseball, I know you played baseball in college, right? So I wanted to get back into like, what's the story of Matt Berkey? I know a lot of people know about your poker journey and know a lot about you as a poker player. Who is like Matt Berkey as the kid kind of growing up and getting into baseball and then eventually poker?
Man, poker was a long afterthought compared to baseball. That was for sure my first passionate pursuit. I wasn't very athletic as my youngest self. So like if you're talking about like T-ball age, 5, 6, 7 years old, stuff like that. I had an interest in sports, but I was still like pretty chubby, slow, unathletic. I didn't have a ton of friends. We were moving around a fair bit at that point. My home life wasn't like super stable. So I didn't even play Little League until I think I was 8 when I finally had the courage to sign up. I was super shy. I didn't want to be bad at things too. So there was that element of it. But yeah, I completely skipped T-ball, went right into minor leagues, was awful, struck out a ton. Finally, when I was 12, I kind of hit a bit of a growth spurt where I went from being kind of like short and chubby to really like tall and lean. My weight hadn't caught up to my growth spurt yet. So there was like a 2 or 3 year window between like 12 and 14 where I was just like gangly. And I found my athleticism then. Like I hit for a lot of power. I had a very strong arm. I still wasn't very fast. I don't think I really knew how to run yet. I didn't realize it was something that required mechanics until I got much older. But yeah, I just found a lot of success pouring myself into it. It was the only thing I wanted to do. I would spend dozens of hours a day, if possible, hitting off a tee, throwing against a wall. I mean, from the time I was 6, it was just me and my garage wall for countless hours. And that was probably some of the best memories that I have as a kid, is just like solo out there grinding, not even realizing that you're kind of grinding in the moment, just playing out scenarios the way kids do, of you being on the mound with the game on the line kind of thing. High school, more the same. I hit really well up until my senior year, and I was just a relief pitcher. I didn't throw super hard. I was left-handed, so I got people out. Senior year came around, and things completely flipped. I was one of the 3 best pitchers in the Valley, but my hitting went to shit. My high school coach, I still remember, told me I had no chance of pitching at the next level, and I should try to pursue hitting. It was literally quite the opposite. Every college that offered me wanted nothing to do with my bat. I was slow. I didn't hit that powerfully. I was left-handed, so I was restricted to where I could play. Sticking me in the outfield was a nightmare. But I had opportunities to pitch. So I ended up going to Allegheny College in Meadville, PA, D3 school that had just come out of the College World Series the year prior. Made the team, thought I was in line to like really bust my ass and work my way through. Failed miserably at that. I got kicked out of fall practice for 2 weeks because I couldn't run the mile in under 8 minutes. which is basically a brisk walk if you're trying. So yeah, I really learned what hard work was in a different kind of way. You know, in high school, it was about getting your mechanics down, doing your T work, taking a lot of BP, throwing a lot of bullpens. But in college, it was about being able to outlast everybody, being able to keep up with everybody for that matter. And especially as a freshman where you have no shot of seeing the field, you got to be able to do something to impress people. So I went through that season, came back as the only lefty on the staff my sophomore year. I took a red shirt for that year, and then ended up getting cut in the fall. So they chose to have 0 lefties on the staff as opposed to keeping me, which I found quite insulting. Reached out to a bunch of other colleges that were offering me when I was coming out of high school. Had a bunch of visits and ultimately landed on Gannon University in Erie, PA, where I played for 4 years. I was pretty much a 4-year starter. Came in there and it was just like a good change of scenery. I showed up and I just lived into the gym. I got votes for captain. Mind you, I came in the spring season, so I missed the entire fall because I was still at Allegheny where I got cut. So I transferred in January. And by our spring training trip in early March, we were voting on captains. And I had enough votes where they pulled me into the office. They're like, we can't make you a captain. You're new here. And you're a redshirt freshman. Like, this isn't a thing, but I just want to acknowledge you've been working really hard. So that was like really meaningful to me. And then they told me that my prior coach had told them that I'm a cancer to the team. I'm lazy and I don't do anything. So that was kind of nice vengeance there. I ultimately get my very first career collegiate start against my former team later that month. So it was like early April. And I don't know that I've ever been so nervous and so determined to like prove myself. It was like the worst. It was like the best and worst case scenario. I think I threw a no hitter through 5, but I walked like 7 people. And my coach, I remember coming out, my pitching coach came out like the 4th inning. He's like, I want to let you finish this game, man, but like your pitch count's at 100 and it's the 4th. I was just like, sit down, man. Like, we got this. So I ended up getting through 5 and we lost in once I got a no decision out of it, but it was a really meaningful start for me. Kind of was the front end of a mediocre collegiate career that never panned out.
Why would your previous coach say something like that to your current coach?
Well, I think from his vantage point, he was just being honest. Because, you know, when you get to college, it's not like high school where you have a lot of interactions with all of your coaches, and it's very insulated to the team kind of runs itself and the coaches oversee it, you know? So for my freshman class coming in, he has like 10, 12 new guys. And the expectation is that like some of them are going to be starters right out of the gate to fill holes for people that had left the season prior. Others are going to be kind of like brought along and fill roles in seasons to come. And I think from his vantage point, I was very quiet. I was very shy. I was very slow and not looking like I'm necessarily working that hard. But I was never showy about it. Like the way that I would work would be to show up after hours. The way that I would work would be, you know, to get in extra bullpens and the things that I thought mattered. But all he was seeing was that I was finishing last in the relay race every single time the pitchers were doing conditioning. He saw my mile time was so bad. To give you an idea, my first mile run at Allegheny that I didn't qualify was 8 minutes and 15 seconds. When I transferred to Gannon, where I did nothing but conditioning between the time of getting cut and transferring, my spring mile run was 5 minutes and 35 seconds. And my best mile by the end of college was 5:05. So I took like over 3 minutes off this time. So in a way, like my original coach was kind of right. You know, I just didn't know how to work, and I expected to be guided by my coaches, by the older classmen, and that's just not the way it works, man. Like once you get to that level, if you're not already primed and ready to succeed, you're just gonna fall off.
So, did you want to go pro when you were playing baseball, or do you think that was not an option? Like, I guess because it seems like that was like your dream. So
I would say both. I desperately wanted nothing more than to go pro, and I had for sure convinced myself that it was on the table, but it was just truly never an option. Nothing I did was very impressive. I didn't throw that hard. I didn't have that much control. I, didn't hit for power or run for speed. Of the 5 tools, I was like mediocre at all 5. So there was nothing that was going to catch a scout's eye. I tried really hard. I went to all the tryouts. I went to a winter league in Arizona for 2 months trying to get signed. And I probably could have caught on in indie ball somewhere. Everybody needs a crafty lefty that can get a guy out in the late innings, but that wasn't really in line with. I didn't want to just drag it out. I wanted to actually have a chance.
What point did you sort of come to terms with this, and at what point did you sort of set your sights on something different other than baseball?
I don't know that it was ever a conscious choice. I think it was more that I was just traveling through the Midwest for the better part of a year, going to tryout after tryout, trying to get picked up somewhere in an indie league, and kind of doing it with a couple of my college teammates who also really had no shot. You play D2 college baseball and you think like, oh man, I'm in like the top 3% of baseball players in the nation. And that's probably true. Very few people make it to the collegiate level. But like of that pool of players, only maybe like another 3 to 5% make it to the next level. And so when you're coming from a bad program in a snow-driven state with minimal exposure to year-round baseball and scouts and actual talent, you can delude yourself into thinking that like I could compete. Like I was competitive in my conference, but none of us outside of like we had like 1 or 2 guys come through in my 5 years of college that had a shot. One of them from Allegheny actually ended up playing for the Pirates for a couple years, Josh Sharpless. And then my catcher in college, he probably had a legit shot to maybe get signed to like low A or independent ball, but he just didn't care to really pursue it. So yeah, in that process, like every stop I was going to, I was also just playing poker. You go to Detroit, you stop in Greektown, you play at MGM or what have you, and I just kept making money and not getting callbacks. Or I would get a callback to day 2 of a tryout and then, ultimately not make it to the signing period. So after that stacked up enough, and I'm kind of like taking inventory of, I turned $800 into like 80K. Maybe this is a much more fruitful pursuit. And the beauty about poker was that it was still fueling my competitive spirit. So I don't know that I would have naturally transitioned out of baseball very gracefully had it not been for me being able to kind of like sink my teeth into something else that had a very undetermined future. But one that, whether it was true or not, I believed I had a pretty high upside on.
Was poker something that you just picked up and like started winning right away in? Is it like, oh, I'm going to start playing some live cash and then just started crushing?
I mean, it's so hard to convey to you guys because your generation is so lucky and unlucky at the same time. Like the way that you guys probably were introduced to the game was probably going to be very similar to me in the sense that it's through friends, right? But the resources you have available the second that you take an interest in it are endless. And you, like, whatever version of you existed in the first year of you playing, I can assure you would have mopped the floor with me and every other person that was playing No Limit Hold'em in 2003. Because, like, you're just going to know things that we didn't even begin to think about. It was truly just a game of wits and wagers back then.
But it's such a good time to get into poker. I feel like you got into it at the perfect time. And it was kind of like right time, right place sort of thing. And then you can kind of catapult from there. Which ended up getting you into like sort of like the spotlight in poker. How did that start to happen? So like, you're just playing after college, you're playing live cash, and then can you go over that sort of?
Yeah. I mean, that timeline's it's probably shortened now, or at least it appears that way. But it was a long, grueling path in the real time. 2003 to Black Friday was the most fruitful time this industry will ever see. It's never going to be replicated. Money will never be so free, and there's never going to be a chance to make it as a professional with less skill set. So yeah, definitely right time, right place. Just being the smartest guy in the room or one of the smartest people in the room often was enough to yield you profit, which was really important, right? Because with the feedback loops being so imperfect, a lot of us just are byproducts of survivorship bias, where
Yep.
we were able to keep anteing up and keep putting ourselves in a position for a big score, and eventually just like outlasting a lot of other people who may have had the exact same talent and just couldn't find another buy-in. So yeah, by 2010, I had accumulated $100,000 bankroll multiple times over, which now doesn't seem like all that much money. But back then, when the biggest game in any room was going to be 10-20-ish, 100K was endless amounts of money if you weren't pursuing, 10K MTTs. By 2011, I had made a deep run in the main event. I had like 300,000. I was backing everybody that I knew. And eventually just went bust. So most of 2012, I was kind of just contemplating life. And you have to understand, at this point, I'm 9 years into my career. I've had multiple bankrolls where I was able to play the biggest game in the room, eviscerated them time and time again, just not really understanding how variance works, which makes some sense, like who knows what win rates were back then? They may have been as astronomical as we think they were, or they may have been like a quarter of that amount, and we were all just like riding the variance train. No one will ever really be able to know. But coming into 2013, I had decided to, give it one more shot. A friend helped me out and floated me 5K. I ran that up to 50 just before the series, sold a package to Marvin Redemeyer, ended up final tabling 3 events, cashing for just shy of 600K, of which I got maybe half-ish, right around half, because I bought some of my package back, and then the final event I played, we didn't have 5Ks on the package at all, and he didn't want my action, so I just fired it and ended up getting 4th, I think, for like 200K, where I had all of myself. And then on the back end of that, because I had been playing live cash for 10 years in Vegas and networking pretty well with well-to-do people, Bob Bright, a long time day trader, invited me to the Aria 200-400 private game with JRB. One thing led to another, and I ended up spending the next 7-8 years just playing for houses, 300, 600, 1200, 100K minimum buy-in twice a week for 7 or 8 years. One of the most unreal experiences I think I could ever have. Again, something that will just like never be replicated, that era. It's just kind of, it came and it went. Those games obviously still exist, but they're just not like they were. The things that I saw, the players that we came in contact with, how free the money was, things of that nature, they've just kind of gone by the wayside. And yeah, it was never intentional for me to be a public figure. I was very happy being in the shadows. Even when I got in that game, I was introduced as like a 2-5 grinder who, just had an interest in gambling, which may not have been that far from the truth. But I think I had done like one interview ever at that point, and it was when I made a deep run in the main. But, once you start playing that big and you have a personality that is a bit opinionated like me, Twitter does its thing, and eventually the cat was out of the bag, I guess.
So over that time period, did you become friends with JRB? He seems like a pretty cool guy in the space. Just like...
Yeah. I mean, you're friends with everybody because it's the same group over and over and over again. But you're also trying to take everyone's head off. And it is business to some degree at the end of the day. So yeah, I mean, like, I would happily call him a friend, but that word just has like such a different meaning in the gambling community than it does in general, right? Like when I think of my closest friends, I would vouch for anything for them. Where it's like when it comes to JRB, it's like I'm not gonna hard vouch alone or things like that because that's just not good business practice, right? So you do really have to separate the two, the social aspect from the business aspect of it, and make sure that you're always looking out for your best interest because no one else is going to.
Interesting. So you're not tight with anybody in the poker community on that level, or you always kind of keep yourself protected in like that space?
I would say I made a very concerted effort to not befriend people in the space. I didn't like the idea of shitting where you eat very much. And now that I'm older, I think I might regret that a little bit. Nobody wants to be disliked, and I think that I rub a lot of people the wrong way because I do have this standoffish type attitude. One of my best friends in the space that I've actually moved out here with is Brent Hanks, and he's the exact opposite of me. He only played MTTs. He befriended literally 100% of the people that he came in contact with, and he's one of the most liked individuals that you'll ever come across. And I remember, when we were younger, I didn't know how he had the energy for it or why he would want to do it. I would see him, at every stop, he's chatting it up with 100 different people, and it's just like, man, you have to go knock this guy's head off in 10 minutes. And he just he's very competitive, but not like that. It's not, I don't think he sees a game like poker as zero sum. I think he sees a different angle where it can all be positive sum, especially in the MTT community, which actually was probably way ahead of its time. It makes a lot of sense. The swapping, the business that you have to do with a lot of other people. Even though the game dynamics itself may actually be zero to slightly negative sum when you factor in rake, the actual career itself very much could be a plus or a positive sum game where you are a part of a greater community that are kind of all working together towards the same thing. And so that all made sense to me. But cash, it's not that way. And I was very much more on the side of I don't want to see these people outside of the casino because I don't ever want to have it cloud my decision when I'm in a big pot.
I mean, I think that's healthy to a degree. The thing about playing high stakes cash is it is very serious, and you're handling, I think with MTTs you can kind of separate the two because you're buying into the tournament, you're playing with chips. In a cash game, you're like, this is actual resources right on the table that someone's trying to take from you. And so it's more of a battleground to a degree. It's less of like a sport and more of just like ruthless intentions versus your opponents.
Yeah, and I mean, you see the EV immediately, right? Like, you're able to recognize immediately in a hand if you played it well, if you played it poorly, and that's going to be reflective in your actual stack. That might be true to a degree in MTTs, but there are so many mitigating factors that just being in the seat is still worth more than combing over, like, did I play this hand terribly wrong or whatever.
So, Matt, take us to that time. So, you bust your roll, you have this amazing spin up, and then you get invited to this huge private game. What are those emotions like when you did get invited to that private game? Was it like, I sort of made it, I'm nervous as shit, I'm going to come in here and destroy everyone? Where was Matt Berkey's head at this point?
Not learning my lesson, that's for sure. I think the one thing that I struggled the most with was truly being respectful to a bankroll. And I think a lot of that just was coming from the fact that money was so free and that I did seem to have such a high win rate in every game that I had ever played. So I think at the time, like I said, I cashed for around $250,000 or sorry, I got to keep around $250,000 from that summer. And then I had built up like maybe a 50K roll. So I had around 300K again. I basically fixed my mistake from 2 years prior. And now I find myself at a 200-400 game. I didn't know if it was a one-off or not. But I just assumed that it was. So I went into that game and I just took half of myself, which is insane on a 300K roll. It's like I'm basically taking a 600K roll and just firing. But in a one-off scenario, like you're going to take whatever, 3-4 buy-ins. It's not going to be the end of the world, If I lose 120K, half of which is mine, okay, not great to lose 20% of your net worth in one sitting, but you can make that back grinding 10-20, which was my normal game at the time. Went in there, did okay. I lost top 2 versus a set versus a guy who grinds 1-3 for fun that was joining us that day. I wasn't really nervous, honestly. It was a 6-handed game. It was very soft. I was the only pro outside of JRB. And I just remember telling myself, like, play this game the same way that you would play like $1, $2. And that's less meaningful now because I think that anybody who is good at their craft just has a well executable strategy that transitions through the stakes. You know, like if you're well studied, it doesn't really matter if you're playing Zynga poker or 100, 200. You're going to have a correct, or you're going to have a reasonable baseline to base your decisions off of, right? And you'll adjust according to the environment from there. But it's 2013. Everything that I have as far as the strategy goes is something that I've cooked up in my own head. So for me, it's like I have the ranges that I've curated for myself. I have the decision-making matrix that I've built off of those ranges. I have the perception of what my opponent's ranges are based off of how they view gambling. You know, I expected JRB to be wide. I expected the 1-3 player to be tight. And you're just making these loose assumptions and basically trying to range assess street over street based off of how money is going in the middle. And I was really good at that back then. I was really good at that. I was really good at live reads. I was really good at piecing it all together and just trying to make the best decision that you could at whatever node you found yourself in when the money was most critical. And so I didn't want to deviate. I didn't want to like have my, for lack of a better term, asshole be so tight that I couldn't give these guys action. You know, I wanted to kind of live up to the build that, he's a 2-5 grinder, but like he's going to be good for the game. And so I was super splashy. I gave a ton of action. I think I lost like 20K that session. Got invited back a couple more times, was maybe like a 60, 70K winner. And at that point, I started to like really start to feel the pressure, monetarily speaking. Like, I wasn't naive to the risk that I was taking on because of those past experiences, and I really did not want to go broke again, even if it meant having to pass on an opportunity to play high stakes. Luckily, my friend who helped me out when I was broke is very well connected. He's not a poker player, and he recently passed away actually, but he was very well connected in like New York finance, and one of his best friends was a hedge fund manager who has just billions at his disposal. And together, as kind of like a favor to him and also wanting to be in action, they were the ones backing me at this point. So I was able to get a more permanent, more stable backing deal, which was important because the game very quickly went from 200, 400 to 3, 6, 12. It felt like it was overnight. Just like, you know, me showing up with like 200K at my disposal to suddenly me having like 2 million in my box. And trying to navigate these super nosebleed stakes while I have pretty much 80% of my net worth on the line in some, like, I bought a piece of the stake, you know, so it's like, even though we have a bankroll that might be like 4 million, I'm still on the hook for like 400K. And, you know, I'm getting a substantial free roll on top of that, which is all great. But 4 million in a 100K minimum buy-in, you know, 40 buy-ins isn't that tough to torch through. And I found that out the hard way somewhere down the line. Luckily, I'd won enough first that I was able to overcome it. But it was surreal because, you know, for tournament players, I'm sure it's all about the titles and chasing the TV tables and the trophies and stuff like that. As a guy who grew up playing cash, idolizing guys like Ivy and the crew that you would see on like high stakes poker, it was way more about the anonymity, the backroom bar table that nobody knows about where hundreds of thousands are being exchanged. Like, you just wanted to play for more money than you could ever conceive.
Speaking of high stakes poker, you know, like that show has sort of like this respect and legacy, right? We all grew up, I guess you were older, right? But like I was watching that in 2009, whatever, as a kid. And like it was such a respectable show, and it got me into poker, like watching season 6 with Dwan and everybody. And then like recently, I saw you on there, and then like you had Airball and like everybody else. I thought you were the one that actually like treated the show with the respect it deserved, and like when Airball was like getting wasted off that one, he looked like a child, dude. So he got like wasted and was like going across and grabbing the chips. I'm like, you're embarrassing yourself on like such a.
That was a good TV moment, though.
You know. Yeah,
I was really annoyed in real time, but like that was good TV for sure.
Yeah, I mean it was. cracked your aces. He's like, give me. It was yeah, it was an interesting watch. But to rewind, so I assume you did good in that huge game. I mean, that's got to be a wild time to go through. Like you're playing with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in front of you after kind of your whole career so far, leading into what year was this? 2013,
Yeah.
2014, and you were rethinking life in 2020 or 2012.
Yeah, I mean,
And
it was a real redemption arc for sure.
mm-hmm,
But I don't know how to articulate how important these opportunities are and like how much of it defines a career.
mm-hmm,
But like there's just a really good chance that I just fade off into mediocrity without that opportunity. And it's such a lucky thing. You know, it wasn't like I deserved it any more than the next guy. Look, maybe I was willing to do a lot of stuff that guys in my position wouldn't have been able to do, like put up that much of my net worth and still play looser than anybody at the table. Like I
mm-hmm,
definitely understood the assignment, you know, like I get live dynamics really well. And so like from that angle you could say like a bit of it was earned. But I think if I'm being honest, like so much of it is just pure luck and I'm the byproduct of things falling in my favor. In spite of whatever struggles may have occurred throughout all of it, in spite of, you know, being on a $5 million downswing at my worst point, in spite of all of that, like the real make or break aspect of this was just having the opportunity and doing something about it, you know? The network that I was able to brush elbows with in that room, it's something to write a book about, you know? It opened doors that I could never imagine within this space particularly.
mm-hmm,
Now, does that define my life? Probably not. Like, had that never happened, maybe I venture off and start a business somewhere else and network in that arena, or,
mm-hmm,
you know, find myself doing public speaking or something else. It doesn't really matter. I think people get really hung up though on the results,
mm-hmm,
and that's always been a little bit bothersome to me. I remember a week or two ago, Osmus, who I've known since I moved to Vegas. Basically, we used to grind 10-20 together for 4 or 5 years before he final tabled the main, and even then, like I was a part of Russell Thomas's team to train because I was so familiar with Osmus and Greggy and Jesse, and you know these guys were just regs in my game that I've been playing with for years. But he tweeted something along the lines of like the poker dream is still alive. You just have to put in the work. It may look a little bit different now, but I assure you that the ascension to the top is very possible. There's a lot of young guys and high rollers, yada yada yada. And I couldn't help but like push back at that because the fact of the matter is the ecosystem has changed drastically. The economics of poker have changed drastically. The barrier of entry may be actually lower from a financial standpoint than it's ever been, but it's higher from a potential or a skill standpoint than it's ever been. If you don't learn quickly, you die. Where we were lucky enough to be able to take years to get to the point of being competent because you're still just better than 80% of the pool just by showing up. And it's easy to take that stance of the dream is still alive when you've already made it and survived all of the pitfalls, right? And however much variance it took for us to get there, it's probably going to be tenfold for anybody who's pursuing it now because they're so on level playing field with so many other people that are getting the exact same resources, have the exact same work ethic, have the exact same amount of finances available to them, getting backing, whatever the case may be, right? So it's like, yeah, of course, there are guys who are young and thriving at high rollers, but that's because they're just a part of a larger pool of players where some percentage of them were going to make it. Um, I think those points are like really important to bear in mind for anybody who wants to pursue it seriously, not because you should be discouraged, but because you should be realistic. You should be honest. Understanding floors and ceilings of any path that it is that you're pursuing are absolutely critical to making good decisions in real time, right? Because I know personally on my path, it was a lot of fuck it. You know, there's a 10K today and I have $100,000. I've played tournaments before. Fuck it, right? We just chased EV. And it's like, you could look at the 10K fields in 2010, 2011, and just say like, well, I've been playing poker for 8 years. I have an edge. And that was probably true. Did it make it justifiably enough to go fire off 10% of your roll? Probably not, but we didn't sell back then. We didn't have easy backing deals to fall into. A lot of us are just self-made. So the support systems weren't there, and we had to learn by trial by fire, but that's not the case now. And as a byproduct, you don't get to make as much money now. You don't get to be as risk on.
Especially like where a lot of the big money is nowadays, it seems to be in live, it seems to be private games, it seems to be trending more towards live PLO, especially seems to be a pretty good way to spin your role
Mm.
if you're able to get an invite. Not only barriers to entry, another one is just being likable and being able to get those invites. Like you got that invite, you sort of were probably considering your role and why I'm getting invited. As a pro, I think people don't do that enough, especially in public games. It's very easy to say, like, fuck it, I don't care. Like, I
Yeah.
want to maximize my EV now. But people really don't think about, like, future opportunities or, like, if the whale likes me and he is in a private game, like, I might get into that game.
Yeah.
Um, what is that world of, like, live networking trying to, because you're there to make money, you're trying to, you got your shot, you got into that big game. How were you able to stay within that network of people and like keep branching out and finding other opportunities?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I have a pretty strong opinion about this. I think like the ability to be authentic is just like worth your weight in gold. If you go back and you watch 2003 World Series and see the kind of characters they were highlighting,
Hmm.
that's what poker was filtering for back then, right? It was still just a game born out of gambling. When you look back at the Bobby Baldwin era, the Doyle Brunson era, the Chip Reese, right? These guys were just like sharp gamblers who had backgrounds in sports or competitive arenas. And I'm framing it that way not to tear down the current generation, but to make it very important and to understand that they were everymen, or at least they presented that way, right? When you look at today's grinders, they are very much filtered for intellect. It's a very cerebral game, and it didn't take that long, maybe 20 years tops, for it to present in a way where the Ike Haxtons of the world are clearly the best of the best, right? That's what you strive to be now if you care about um actually defining your skill set. But there's limitations to this, right? Like there aren't that many Ikes because the guy's a bona fide genius.
Yeah.
And poker still lends itself to the everyman, right? The people who you're taking money from are not bona fide geniuses. I mean, they might be in their own regard, but not as it applies to poker. So I think from my era, it was about having an aptitude for games and having an aptitude for being authentic socially, right? Understanding that this is a bit of a locker room, so to speak, and the way to have longevity is to be competitive, to be challenging, but to be likable and to be a guy that maybe the Rex aspired to grab a beer with after the game because you're kind of a level-headed individual. You're not nerding out on them. I think that that's probably the toughest thing for the newer generation. If you're really good, you're probably also really, really, really smart and maybe a little bit socially awkward. I think I'll double back to like being authentic because I do think there's a lot of people who try to social engineer their positions in this game, and it works for a time. But again, you're dealing with really sharp people who play this game either as a very passionate recreation or for a living. So eventually you get found out. Like there are just way too many people that are good at reading situations to allow somebody to like socially engineer a spot where they have infinite EV just oozing out of them because they've gotten the right people to like them. Keating is Keating because that's authentically him. He's not putting on a show for anybody. He degens the way that he presents. And I think that when you look at, you can kind of go down the line. When you look at the longevity of the characters who have made it in the live private world, particularly, they're not really playing a character. They're just maybe exaggerating a bit of who they already are, and that lends itself well to the environment. And in my instance, it's like I was doing a lot of things that when the recreational goes to their favorite pro that isn't maybe as social as me, like a Rast comes to mind. He used to come in and get like late night seats. I know he probably was like close with Roble and Jeremy. When they go to him and they say, "Hey, listen to this hand history that Berkey played," he just objectively says that is awful. They're like, "Okay, good. He can stay." Um, and it's like, it's easy to just play dumb and be like, "Oh, it's not that bad." But the reality is like you're consciously doing things that give up EV. You have to. Like if you have a big enough win rate, if you're winning 10 big blinds per hour, that's an astronomical win rate live. That's probably on par with like 35 or 40 big blinds per 100. If you have a win rate that large, you can give a quarter of it back to the environment in order to preserve your longevity. Now, of course, as the game gets tougher and your win rate drops, you have to be more conscientious of shifting your strategy as well. I think these are the things that get overlooked when you're young and hungry and want to prove yourself and you're so ego driven. You want
Well,
all the
Matt,
accolades.
I think a lot of the things that you do or deviate in terms of sacrificing EV are in the aggressive in the aggressive realm. So a lot of times that works, right? Like you're going to just be, I'm sure a lot of times you're three betting a hand or check raising or just barreling off a hand that is inappropriate, but a lot of times just aggression works, right? And then sometimes when you get called down, everyone's like, "Look how dumb Matt Berkey is. Look at how like." I think the criticism for you has always been like, Matt Berkey's kind of a monkey. Like he'll blast it. Recreationals like that. They don't like regs that are on the tighter side. They want to be able to. They want to call Matt down. They want to have the liberty to call you and know that you're bluffing sometimes instead of just calling the guy that's under bluffing.
Yeah, there's
If
no
that makes
worse
sense.
feeling than trying to navigate hands that should be played for value and treating them as bluff catchers because the environment's too tight. Like
Yeah.
that's the worst experience a recreational can have.
Mhm.
I have a flush in a 3-bet pot, but my opponent is still betting. I don't even think it's good at this point. Like that's an awful feeling. And it's one that people who play live pretty consistently can resonate with because once you're only beating bluffs, it doesn't matter how strong your hand is. Quite frequently, you're just not winning in the live world because to this day, there's still just so many nodes that are drastically under bluff.
Yeah. In terms of like private versus, so Vegas has private games. We live on the East Coast. That's not real. Well, in casinos at least, right?
Yeah.
So in a casino, games are public. If it's on the list, you can hop in. Which dynamic do you prefer? Do you like the wait list, and if you get on the game, you get on it, or do you like sort of these curated lineups? And is it sustainable?
Yeah.
Either one.
Yeah, I guess like I think my preference is far less important than the bigger discussion of what's better for the overall ecosystem. And I think it's very easy to demonize private games from the outside looking in. But kind of as I was mentioning, it's really important for the game to be able to select for sustainability.
I
And
agree.
that's the biggest issue with public games. And I think we can look no further than like high rollers to demonstrate what happens when you kind of just open a space up for the best of the best to compete against one another until an equilibrium is reached. And what's ultimately happening is that the rake is increasing and win rates are decreasing. And by and large, outside of prestige, very few people are winning. And I don't want to portray that or undermine anybody who's out there killing it, like a Kuhn or an Ike, etc. Like, of course, they have win rate, but my larger point is just that, whatever 5 to 15% ROI they may have in a fast-paced 2-day high roller, they probably have like 3x that amount in a large field open event. It's just their hourly suffers a bunch and it's not worth it to them. I think whenever you take something much more stable like cash, because at least in tournaments, there's an element of variance that's just baked into the structure, right? It's a leveler, and it will at least keep intriguing recreationals to come back. When you take something very stable like cash, there's only so many tricks you can add to the gaming environment itself to make it more appealing to recreationals. We add a bunch of side games like Seven Deuce and Stand Up Game, and these have been absolute game changers as far as bettering the cash environment and increasing the ability to sustain and draw in recreational money. But they require a private environment to do so. It's really hard to enforce the stand-up game in a public game
Yeah.
unless you're going to collect the bounty ahead of time, you know? And if I've learned anything about public games, this is the other aspect of it. You have to police a public game so much harder against EV leeches. People that will do anything to increase their bottom line that are within the structure of the game, right? Even if they're soft angles or what have you. The seed hoppers, the guy who will, be three-handed in stand-up, go dust and leave, only to come back an hour later. Even the people, I can remember back when I was grinding, the people who would like rat hole by, doubling up and then going on the dinner list to skip a 25-person wait list so that they could come back in an hour with their original buy-in. I don't even know if that type of stuff exists anymore, but like these were courtesies that were being extended. Like I remember Turning Stone specifically was one place where this happened. These were just courtesies that were being extended to regular players that were massively taken advantage of when there was an influx of young 18-year-old online kids that would come in and just think about how to game the system. That's the way their mind works, right? Everything is about strategy. I have a story. I have a couple of stories of one in particular. For a long time, the reason why when running it twice. So in the private game, when you run it twice, the odd chip goes to out of position. And that's the way it used to uniformly be. But in the public game, as far as I know, in Vegas, they changed it to the top board gets the extra chip. And the reason for this is there was one person in particular who would run it twice out of position and once in position because of the EV difference of getting the extra chip. And when you do the math on it, like if he gets to do this 1,000 times, he's making like double-digit big blind win rate here just by, chopping enough of the time when he's out of position, which is sick. It's honestly just sick to even think that. But it's like the type of people who think about like grimming and, finding these ways to game the system online in order to take what looks like a tiny sliver of EV, but when you extrapolate it out is actually like a double-digit win rate, and these people exist everywhere. And they're so fucking hard to police in a public arena, They're just a cancer to the environment, but there's very little you can do about it because it's open to anybody. The beauty about private is that all of these people get filtered out very, very quickly. It's a lot easier to control for cheating. It's a lot easier to control for EV leeches. It's a lot easier to control game dynamics and ensure that you're curating games that are good for everybody, not just good for one or two people. And I know how unappealing this sounds to the people that aren't able to get in. But I will say that another aspect of it that makes it what I think both sustainable and appealing to the larger vision of the game is that it requires a second set of soft skills, ones that aren't necessary to play a public game, And I think it's good that those soft skills are rewarded. And obviously I'm speaking from a biased position, but if I was a headphone wearing, hoodie up, talk to no one, consider myself to be like an upper echelon intellect, I don't think that I would be that upset about being shut out from that environment, right? Because there's so many other environments where I'll thrive. I'll do well online. I'll do well in high rollers. I'll do well in MTTs. And yeah, I might have to work a little bit harder at my craft in order to achieve the same bottom line. But understand that conversely, the people that are getting into the private realm are also having to work harder at their craft. Their craft just isn't blind versus blind 3-bet pot node study, right? It's more of like how to curate proper betting matrices versus a whale who will be offended by overbets. So it's like, how do I deal with that EV loss of not being able to overbet in these spots and juggle still maximizing the situation?
Yeah, Lucas and I used to run a private game, and if you were like a reg, I mean, nothing like 5100, but it'd be like 510, 25, like games like that. In the private element, they run bigger, but like if you were just like a reg, then you just get no grace. If you come and you offend a player that's here playing for fun, like you just you just aren't going to be invited back. So there is a completely different set of soft skills, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Because you're winning in the games you're playing in, and so you have to work extra hard to make sure that you're providing something to the environment that's,
Yeah, and look, I
adding to
get
the
it.
space.
There's a lot of people who don't want to do that, and that is respectable, totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
But like both of these realms are always going to coexist.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't any abolishment of private, right? Because if there were, or if people pushed for that, what would happen is you would just see a deterioration in the casino and more home games popping up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I used to run a 10 quarter game at Wing Creek. It's like not super well known, but it's north of Parks.
Hmm.
And um, sort of organized it. It didn't really run. The biggest game that really ran was like once a week, and it was 5-10 on a Saturday. I was mainly grinding 2-5, 5-10, playing some at Parks, like some 10-10-20. But I liked Wing Creek more. It was like closer casino. It was more friendly. The players weren't so like EV seekers. I feel like Parks really has a bad bum hunting EV seeker mindset, and
Yeah,
it's like pretty egregious and it's pretty blatant in front of like the recreation or the action player. Um, and organizing the 10 quarter game, it's sort of exactly what you said. It was like, okay, I'm gonna invite some of my best friends, but I'm also gonna see like, all right, which regs are like trying to give action, which guys are trying to be fun, and then you also have your action players, and you have to make decisions in terms of lineup and because it is a public game, so it's kind of like you have to text everyone to make sure they're there
yeah,
on time because someone can get in front of you. But there are boundaries in terms of trying to run like a semi-private game at a casino, and it comes when there's stand-up game, when there's seven deuce, when you guys want to do these side things, even something as silly as like time flop. Like
yeah,
we had to work months. I had to work months with the manager to get that approved, and we had to do it like discreetly and all this random stuff. But when you run a home game, you can do a lot more fun stuff in terms of like side games. You can do Squid Game, Progressive Squid, all this like fun, crazy shit. That makes it a better time for everyone.
yeah. And I mean, you guys aren't necessarily as familiar with the Vegas private scene, but effectively it's just a home game in a casino where you're paying rake. And that's
Mm-hmm.
just so powerful
Mm-hmm.
because you are, first of all, not getting raked to death
Mm-hmm.
because the host is trying to cover his ass for loans and losses and things of that nature,
Mm-hmm.
just general risk.
Mm-hmm.
But also, you have the security of being in a casino, and that's
Yeah,
just worth so much
it
because
is.
not just for the host, but for the players too. It's like I'm sure there's plenty of home games where they intend to run things on the up and up, but all it takes is one person to have a scheme in mind and get the dealer involved.
Yeah.
It's pretty difficult to breach those layers whenever you're in a casino.
Yeah. What do you think of these side games that have become so popular? There's in cash. There's been a bit of innovation as of late in terms of trying to spice up the action, whether it's like double board bomb on a dealer change. We mentioned Nick game, seven deuce game, progressive squid. Big Blind Annie is becoming, I think, a bit more popular out there in Vegas. It's not really a thing out here on the East Coast.
Yeah.
What do you think of all these different attempts to spice up the cash game environment? Which ones do you like? Which ones don't you like?
Yeah,
And
I think innovation is long overdue for cash. I think the fact that like 40 big blind minimum in most casinos is still a thing is just like a gross misunderstanding of no limit hold'em, and it goes back to the old limit days. Like that's where they came up with these arbitrary numbers from. So yeah, I think it's like long overdue. Personally, I don't think it even needs to extend further than just big ante. Like I think everything could be put into just like anytime you want more action, raise the ante.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep upping the ante. And this was figured out 15 years ago with the addition of straddles. It's just we didn't understand what was happening, right? There's a huge difference between live money being put in the pot and dead money being put in the pot. So straddles actually quite often tighten the game.
Mm-hmm.
There are just more people with live money in the pot, and that's a problem. Antes do the exact opposite. If you just have somebody putting a 5 big blind ante out there, chaos is just sure to ensue. Every range across the board starts to increase their VPIP by a substantial amount, and this is especially true for big blind defending, which is a great thing. Like anytime we have the person with the most dead money out there forced to see flops while sacrificing position post. It's just going to make for a good environment, right? I love the stand-up game. I think it's getting close to have run its course. When I say I think it's getting close to have run its course, I think it gets overused in games that don't need it. Let me put it that way. Because the true benefit of the stand-up game is the tax it imposes on like bum hunters and super nitty players.
Mm-hmm.
When you can point to one or two guys in the game who are 85% to pay every single time that you play the game, that's just like 3 big blinds per half hour in your pocket, you know, depending on how big the bounty is. Like assume it's 4 big blinds a person. You're probably making 3 big blinds per half hour per hour. So 3 to 6 big blinds per hour just by having them at the table, right? So it can take somebody who is stealing EV from the environment and is maybe like a 2 big blind winner through being a super nit and bum hunting to making them now like a -10 big blind loser, just based off of the rate at which they pay. And people don't understand that. Nits particularly don't understand that. They're just too risk averse to get it. So I think in games where you have 2 or 3 of those guys where they're just auto pay spots, that's where you should be really, really, really pressing for more nit game, more stand up, and probably not even progressive, because progressive probably just like dilutes too much of the win rate goes to the most aggressive, the most laggy player in the game. Like I love progressive, but that's just because it caters to me, you know. Whereas traditional stand up, I get to win a lesser portion of the pie, but the right people are paying the biggest portion of the pie over and over again. So I think from that standpoint, it's really good. 7 Deuce, I think, is always a good addition. Again, I used to be a pretty big advocate against it because for the longest time, the way cash games played is that you just knew 80% of the pool was devoid of bluffs when you got to the river. And 7 Deuce suddenly allowed them to have like double and triple barrels that they never had before. And I hated that because of the amount of confidence you could make on river decisions where, like, you know, you're just never, ever, ever bluff catching. So you're either rebluffing or folding type of stuff. But I've really grown to like it because of what it does to them pre-flop and what it does to their actual bluff catching. So whereas they were previously like never paying, they'll give you credit for 7 Deuce a lot, which is ironic because it's like I don't need to have an extra 16 combinations of bluffs in my range for you to know that I'm over bluffing spots. But suddenly like something clicks to them. And they're just like, oh, well, I could beat 7 Deuce. It's like, okay, you get to beat a host of other hands too, if you cared to look. But sure, it's good that you see that I could have 7 Deuce in this spot now, I guess. I'm curious what the next evolution of these side games will be, because I don't think people ever stop thinking and inventing.
Yeah. I hate 7 Deuce. I was on your boat like previously. It's just too much. It's like, what the fuck, man? Now I have to like put this whole other hand in this guy's range. But so Matt, you said that just poker's zero sum, and you were fine staying in your own lane and being more like private. How did you get into content creation? Like, what was like the journey with that? I'm curious to know how that started with that mentality.
Yeah, I think it was a semi-conscious decision, I guess. I never wanted to be a content creator. I didn't really want the public eye. I was very happy being in my lane. But I kind of mentioned that I went on a huge downswing in Ivy's room that culminated in me having to take a 2.5, 3-month break to caregive for my grandmother, who ended up passing away from cancer. And in that whole process, I spent a lot of time like retooling my game, talking with friends and peers. And I really had a drive to want to start a business. Partly because I wanted to at least attempt to have some stability. But I think more important than that, I wanted to find a way to build something bigger than whatever the hell I was building out of being a cash game player who played high stakes. Like, to me, that wasn't ever going to be a legacy, you know? So when we launched Solve for Why, the idea was that like I knew poker best, so this would be where I found my footing, right? It would be where I learned business. It would be where we really developed a strong mission statement for the company. And the idea was to develop something that would be applicable to root cause solutions in all aspects of life. So start with poker, move on to bigger sandboxes to play in somewhere down the line. And it became obvious very quickly that marketing is the biggest sore point for any new business. And I think that like we were just really lucky. It was like time and place. Um, having done the final table thing with Russell, where we kind of documented the whole journey and what a cool experience that was, and being friends with Jason Somerville at the time and seeing like what he was able to build on Twitch. It just all felt really early, kind of like when I got into poker in 2003 to begin with. And to me, it just felt like there was so much of the market that was underserved in very specific ways. So like our first product was the Academy, because it felt like live players in particular in this new GTO world in 2016 were being completely underserved. Nobody was talking about the live environment, the sizing schematics, the pool tendency, the live reads and stuff like that. And I felt like we could fill that gap in the market. And I also felt like we had just like a lot of great assets at our disposal. Pigtails Production, who filmed and documented the Russell Thomas Final Table docuseries, were good friends of mine via my roommate Dan O'Brien. And it was just like, okay, well, if we can make this entertaining while educational, I don't think we can really miss. So vlogs were kind of like just getting on the precipice of being a thing. I think only Trooper and Andrew Nemi existed at this point. Maybe a couple others I'm forgetting, but I know Brad hadn't started yet. So I don't really know who else would have been around. So we launched a vlog, started being a lot more active on Twitter instead of just posting chip count updates, giving more opinions. And it just kind of snowballed from there. It was like, well, I think the ideas that we have are really good. I think the production value is the best in the business. And 1 year later, PokerGo launched. So it's like, now we have a collaborative partner that we can do bigger stuff with, like To Be Determined, for instance. We were able to make a couple documentaries that we sold to them, and that was a lot of fun as well. So it wasn't intentional, I don't think. It was never meant to be. I think if I would have had as strong of an intention towards it the way Doug did, we probably would have found more success, because he was just lethal in the way that he approached it from a strategy standpoint, from a data standpoint, where we were just like kind of shooting from the hip, concerning ourselves with like making good content and letting the chips fall as they may. And that's just like not the right approach to online marketing, in my opinion.
I mean, I enjoyed both of. I enjoyed both content. Like I enjoyed learning from Upswing or learning from you. I thought you guys had a lot of good stuff, mostly when it came to like the live arena. I really enjoyed. I like that. I love the documentary, by the way. I really enjoyed. What'd you guys do? Like Out Loud or something?
Poker Out Loud, yeah.
Poker Out Loud. Yeah, that was really cool. Why do you think you were so? You're just so controversial. When I talk to other players about you, it's like you have this group that really doesn't like you. I think you're aware
Yeah.
of that, but and then a lot of people like you. Like I am more just like I just think you do good. Like you seem like you're just well spoken and calm, and I think a lot of times you're misunderstood. But why do you think that, for whatever reason, you're so controversial, and why did Doug particularly attack you?
Well, we launched our companies at almost identical times. I think he launched Upswing maybe 6 months after us, give or take. And again, like the market was brand new. Only Run It Once existed. There was, I guess, Jonathan's site, but he was still mostly just doing like a lot of one-on-one stuff at that point in time. So it became like a pretty. He's not going to go after Phil. That would be crazy. So I think
which Phil? Phil Galfond?
Galfond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They ended up doing that later, but sorry.
Yeah,
We'll get back
once
to
he was established as being a real competitive rival,
right.
but in the early goings when you're starting up and you have a couple hundred. Also, like at that point, he referred to himself as the supreme leader, but I don't think there were a lot of people outside of the online community who knew who he was, or what his story was, or even cared. 15, poker was still very live centric. That's why by 2017 Poker Go launched. It was really to highlight the live arena and the characters in it. And I think Doug came in with that chip on his shoulder from being an online guy who particularly battled in the heads up arena. And I also think he's just like very confrontational that way as a heads up guy. Whereas I think that the reason why I'm so polarizing is that I don't really ask permission to say or believe anything that I stand for. And I'm very principled in a lot of those beliefs, right? Like I'm just the older statesman, like I'm not a young up and comer who kind of needs to look to somebody else to approve a thought or a direction for the game. So I say things very matter of factly that are often just my opinion. And I kind of just assume that people are willing to engage in good faith. Like if they disagree, they'll disagree in good faith. If they agree, great. I found out very quickly the internet doesn't work that way. You put something out there and most people are pretty ill-equipped to debate in good faith, and they often just like resort to logical fallacies and ad hominem attacks and everything else. So I think that being in a really male-dominated sphere that is ultra competitive and there not being anything for me to really hang my hat on that is quote unquote super impressive. If I had never spoken a word publicly and just put my resume out there in 2015, I think people would have been like, this guy's good, kind of like the Darren Elias of the world. Just quietly grind and just keep racking it up, right? What could you ever say bad about Darren? And I think him and I are like very similar. His dad was actually my athletic director in college.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think like we have very similar paths. Like we're athletes. We found poker via competition, and we just kind of quietly grinded for a long time and found our lane. I think the issue is that like I don't ask permission to get out of my lane. I just do it, and that rubs people the wrong way because it's like, who gives you the right, or what gives you the right to be an authority on everything? And it's like, well, even though that may be the way that I'm coming across, that's not what I mean. I don't say things because I believe that my opinion is the end all be all. I just say things that I have a lot of conviction in. And if you want to disagree, we can have a conversation over that. And I don't think that that is something that people really care for. People like Galfon, people like Darren, people like the type of person who's willing to kind of like speak softly and speak to everybody in a mindful way, right? Like the person who, same thing with like Joey, the person who like never really takes a strong stance on anything unless it's so abundantly clear that the majority is on that strong side that you then kind of like say, okay, I'll speak on behalf of all of you. What's going on here is not right, Whereas like I'm the opposite. I'm kind of like really quick to just like jump in front of things and be like, look, man, I don't know if this hand was cheated or not, but I can tell you this: there are 12 security protocols that are really fucked up, and the opportunity to cheat was 95% probable, right? And I'll hang my hat on that. I'll just say like, look, I believe this to be true. I think I have enough to back it up. Here's the receipts. Disagree if you want. And the problem is that like people choose sides. So if you're a big fan of the product that you're watching, you're gonna hate me because I'm saying something that doesn't really bode well for that particular house. And obviously I'm talking about HCL in this instance. And for what it's worth, like Ryan and I have spoken and they've made a lot of strides there, and everything seems to be above board now. But there was this time frame where it's like you could either speak out or you could be a part of the circus, and I chose to speak out. Are you
specifically talking about the Robbie hand or
or
a different? Okay, I mean that's so abundant. In my opinion, that's a clear cheating. How could it not?
I point to that one specifically because of how divisive the whole thing was, not just between Robbie and Garrett, but also between like the back of the house and the front of the house. between the players and the management, between the observers and the players, the observers and the management. You know what I mean? It's like we had this thing go on that went hyper viral in the poker, not just the poker community, but like nationwide. It was on SportsCenter, it was on everything else.
Yeah.
And we have this full circus unraveling before our eyes. And it's like, well, there were two approaches to it. Like, we chose to dig our heels in on the security aspect of it and maybe offer a little bit less conjecture as far as like what actually happened in the hand itself, and a lot more on like what's plausible based off of what security is or isn't in place, what's the best steps forward when it comes to stream houses, when it comes to the game itself and everything else moving forward. And then there's like, Joey, who I love to death, but he was just literally the ringleader of a circus. It's like, who can we do? Let's get Beans on the line. It's like, the fuck does Beans have to do with anything? And now all of a sudden we're talking about this guy like going to jail for tax evasion. It's like, okay, I mean, like he became the Maury Povich of the whole thing.
It was. I agree. It was like it was a shit show. I was listening to Joey's whole thing, and you're like,
he's like, lock in, baby. We're here for 36 hours straight, no sleep. Like let's not. And honestly, it was wonderful. It's entertaining. It's also a lane that is needed. It just like wasn't one that I wanted to really drive in.
So can you tell us why you think? Like you said, you're 95% sure. You're leaving yourself a little space that she cheated, right?
I mean, I feel 100% confident that the hand is not above board.
Yeah.
Robbie's involvement is debatable to me.
Well, what do you think happened?
Honestly, I mean, with what we know now, with how like live cheating rings have been operating in the past 2 or 3 years, I think the most probable explanation is that she was being signaled by Rips, who was perhaps using a whole card cam to catch the pitch, and signaling to her like just thumbs up, thumbs down type of situation. But that's just conjecture. That's just me kind of piecing together like what I know about how people have been cheating more recently. There's still a lot of other aspects of the HCL stuff that was unaccounted for, like the guy who was working in the back who took money off of Robbie's stack, and his access to whole cards. The fact that God mode was turned on in the production booth for that time frame. Like there was just to me, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what happened in the hand, right? There were so many different ways that it could have been cheated, and the hand so clearly doesn't pass the sniff test years after the fact, knowing Robbie a lot better, seeing how she plays. I played with her 3 or 4 times on Live at the Bike post Jack 4, and she was beyond nitty. Like, think of the nittiest player, and she was 10 times tighter. Like, there were so many hands I could point to that are just absolutely not in line with somebody who would play Jack 4 that way, or even Jack 3 if she believed that she had a 3.
Right.
Like, there's a hand where she defends big blind on Live at the Bike. I'm sure they took the video down since then because it changed ownership, but there's a hand where JD at Recreational opens. She defends the big blind with Queen Jack. It comes like Jack 6-4. She checks. He bets 50% pot, and she just folds. And it's like, you're telling me that this woman put in $150,000 with what she thought was bottom pair? Like, come on.
And also, too, that whole thing about the bottom pair, that was all confusing to me, too, because, like, she was like, she gets it in, she looks at her cards, like, during the hand. Like, most people can see, like, if you're double checking your cards, you're not going to make that mistake of misreading your hand. And then, like, she didn't have a conclusion until weeks after, where she's on, like, the one podcast, and she's like, all right, I'm telling the truth now. I thought I had a 3.
Yeah, of course.
And I was too embarrassed to do it. And it's like...
There's enough anecdotal evidence in every direction to say that, like, the story changed 20 times over, and none of it was consistent with reality. But from a more logical framework, the way to look at this is just through the extremes, right? Like, give the utmost benefit of the doubt, right? Believe that she misread her hand. Believe that she had a live tell on Garrett. Believe all of these things. Can we get to a conclusion where the hand makes sense? And there are some people that say yes. I know like Alex Jacobs and a bunch of others still to this day are pioneering that, she was falsely accused and there's no evidence to the contrary. And look, that's fine. I personally think if you take it to that farthest extreme of giving her the benefit of the doubt in all aspects, knowing what we know about how she plays, seeing the way that she has played hands since then for far less money, it's impossible to conclude that that hand was, just an occurrence, just a random recreational doing random recreational things. I mean, it's not possible,
How do you think Garrett handled the situation, and what would you have done differently?
Well, I wouldn't have done it. I shouldn't say that I would or wouldn't have done anything, but I would have reacted similarly for sure. I would have felt cheated. For sure, I would have felt cheated. I don't know that I would have even thought to confront her off camera. And just in general, as a rule, I think in situations like this, it's probably bad practice to do anything off camera. But if you're trying to get the money back, off camera is the only way it's going to happen.
He
She's
got
not
his
going to
money
admit
back,
guilt.
yeah.
Yeah, she's not going to admit guilt on camera. So yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough. I really don't think there's a world where I would have been confrontational enough to get the money back. But that's like just a big difference between me and Garrett. Like he's very like plugged in and locked in those spots. I probably would have like sat there for hours just recounting the hand, wondering like what the hell happened, just steaming my face off. And then I probably would have I think that's even tough for me to say. I was gonna say I think I would have been a lot less public about it the way he was after the fact, but I don't know, man. I've gone on some Twitter rants where it's like once you press send, the floodgates are open.
Yeah, I don't think you would have been less public about it. That's my
yeah, probably not. Probably not. Well, to be fair, if I didn't get the money back, I think I would have convinced myself I was more justified in just being like outright public and whatnot.
Private game or in a casino, especially playing at such high stakes. I imagine it's a big concern, and obviously more now than ever, you're sort of attentive to the possibility of it.
Yeah, I have a pretty high confidence that a couple of summers ago I was cheated by a recreational from LA who I have a pretty high degree of confidence he was using pinhole cameras. This is when we first learned about the scheme.
Yeah.
But he was insistent in sitting in the 2-seat. He was insistent in playing the must-move game, which was far, far, far tougher than the main game. He turned down main game seats, mostly because they weren't in the 2-seat. And he just did some wild stuff. The hand that really sent me over the edge, where I was pretty positive I was being cheated, was he opened under the gun. Button was blind drunk and 3-bet him. I cold 4-bet king queen off from the straddle, and he cold called my 4-bet from under the gun. Came king 9-4 all spades, and I had the queen of spades. I bet smallish. He called. Turn was a brick. I bet like 2/3 pot. He called. River was a 9, and I checked. And I remember the reason in game that I checked was because I hadn't seen him pay a river in days. So I probably had like 20 or 30 hours logged with him, and I just hadn't seen him misplay a river yet. He never paid when he was losing, and he seemed to always find a way to extract when he had the best hand. So I was like, well, if I can't get him to call worse here, I'm just going to check and hope that he actually does bluff some of the time, even though I haven't necessarily seen it yet. So I check, and he bets like 50K into 30, and I just like roll my eyes, am super annoyed, and then I call, and he shows 9-4 suited of hearts for river trips.
Wow.
So he just like, and to be fair, like, the obvious counter is like, well, why would he call with a 9 twice if he's cheating unless he knows the run out? And the answer that I basically think is very plausible is, well, it's a very small amount of risk for a high amount of reward. If he knows my hand is king queen with the queen of spades, he knows that I will put a lot of money in the river if he makes 2-pair or trips.
He could play the river perfectly,
Exactly.
essentially. So
Exactly. If he can invest, $12,000 to play the river perfectly and make 50,000 every time he improves, it's not that bad of a deal. Especially when he's going to get to play every other river for the rest of the session perfectly. So at worst, it makes him look splashy where he call folds, you know? So to me, this was just like a part of the ruse, and he happened to hit a 9 and get paid, which was infuriating to me. But when he shows like 9-4 suited here, it's just like, okay, man, like you're not that guy. Nobody's that guy anymore in 2024 at this point in time, you know? But for sure, you're not that guy. So what the fuck is going on here? And at that point, like I kind of made a group chat with all the regs, and I was like, listen, like, we're for sure getting cheated. Like he was up like 280,000 playing 1-1 that day. And the game was not that big. I've never seen anybody book bigger than like 120K win. And he's up almost 300,000 in like 7 hours. It's like, yeah, man, we're fucking getting cheated.
The way to spot a cheater, and Lucas has been cheated multiple times.
Yeah.
I've had a cheater infiltrate my game. It decimated my game for a year. They're playing something, they're playing this style that looks very whaley, right? And it's like, oh, I can get money from this guy. But if things are suspiciously they're suspiciously playing perfect, like it's like they're playing so whaley but suspiciously perfect. Like that's really what a cheater looks exactly like that. So if you're seeing that behavior, like then that's just instant red flag.
My rule of thumb is basically like if you're suspicious of somebody and you haven't seen them show down very much, and when they do, they made the perfect decision every single time. Like basically you can take river data, and if you're reasonably sharp and objective about it, not just jumping to conclusions where a small amount of variance will raise a red flag. But if you're actually like willing to stick it out and say like, okay, if I'm wrong and this guy is just that bad, like playing 8 hours with him is going to be really good for me. If I'm right, I'll collect enough data to confirm. If you're willing to go that route, river data is more than enough to justifiably come to conclusions.
Yeah. And the thing with these cheaters, because I was playing at Parks when they hit Parks, I was lucky because I only played with them twice. So I was playing 10, 20, 40 at the time. And I do remember, I think they were Asian looking, but I think they were Uzbeki.
They're from Kazakhstan.
Yeah, one of the stands.
Yeah.
And I was playing 10, 20, 40, and he looked like 45, 50-year-old dude, like Gucci'd out, like just all this drip on him. So like immediately first thought that comes to mind is he's the spot. Sits down. I was across the table from him, so I was the only one who wasn't down money. Everyone else at the table was down money, and there was a reg on my left, and we started texting each other. We're like, something's not right. This dude's winning every pot, every showdown. And the one hand he lost on the river was where someone made an insane call down on like a 4-liner with like high card.
Very Postle-esque.
Yeah, with like high card.
Yeah.
It's the only pot he lost, and because he wasn't expecting the guy to call with high card, obviously. We're texting each other. We're like, everyone's down at this table, right? And I'm like, yeah, except for me, but I haven't played a pot with him. And so like, leave the game. And the week prior, and this is when it flicked on for me, was like the week prior, I had took 50-100, where similar situation, normal casino whale, who's a regular and likes to play 10, 20, 40, decides to play 50-100. He's totally clean. I know that for a fact. Another guy, though, shows up. So I'm like, this is a 2-well lineup, and only 3 or 4 other regs at it. So, like, it's a pretty good spot to be in. I shot take, and there was a hand that was really sus. One of the regs immediately sits out, and the guy, like, bounces, like, 2 minutes later. I by far was, like, not a big loser, but I did hear stories of, like, regs playing these guys heads up, like, live heads up, and they were just always wrong, because of course they were. And they just lost heaps. Thanks to you guys, the pinhole camera got more exposure and, like, cheating mechanisms that they could be using. But yeah, that was a time where, like, a lot of players were, like, not really sure about the live environment, like especially live casinos. It's like the one place you're supposed to feel super safe in.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of overreaction. People are very sensitive to variance, and especially whenever you give them probable cause, where it's like, well, we know these types of systems exist. They tend to overreact. one of my friends in particular, he's a brilliant poker player, but like he just is for sure that everybody's cheating. Like somehow he's discovered like 20 cheaters in the last 18 months playing live poker at the Bellagio, whereas, you know, we've had like maybe 2 people we've been suspicious of worldwide in like this high stakes group that we share information in. So it's just like, well, you know, you're probably not being exposed to 10x the cheaters as the rest of the world. You're probably just a little bit of a hypochondriac in this type of scenario. But it's also a lot of misinformation too. Like when the Chauncey Billups thing broke this past October, the mainstream media was running with this narrative that I don't know if it was Kash Patel of the FBI or if it was somebody from the DOJ or somebody. Somebody said something about X-ray tables, which was just some idiot who doesn't know anything about technology trying to put a normal person label to something that isn't at all that. And what he was actually referring to is, you know, you can buy these decks of cards that have infrared scans on them. So every card, 1 through 52, has an infrared marking on the bridge of the deck as well as on the top of the card. And you could set like a false phone or key fob or something like that, and it'll scan the deck. And it'll just read 1 through 52. You'll get it in an earbud. And so you'll know what seat wins. You'll know what hand they have. All this stuff, right? Very powerful. And they referred to that as being an X-ray table. The reality is that can only ever happen in a home game because you're playing with fucking random bicycle decks that are pre-manufactured in China with this infrared scanner on it. And number two, in order to get these decks in the game at all, you have to be in bed with the back of the house. Whether that's just the dealer himself or it goes all the way up to the game runner, like these decks don't just magically appear. It's not like I can sit down in the 5 seat and through the course of an hour or two work a deck into play, you know? So this stuff, like they were making it seem like this technology was viable in the casino. Like, yeah, these X-ray tables, they exist. Like, you know, you can do this, that, or the other to malfunction the shuffler and to take it over and all this other stuff. And it's like this technology kind of loosely exists, but what is necessary to actually execute on it is almost viably impossible in a casino environment, barring it being like an Ocean's 11 type of scheme. And that type of FUD just like really scares casuals away, I think.
You think it scares them away? Like casual? I mean, I think it scares people away from home games.
I think it scares them away the same way that, well, I don't think they're sharp enough to know the difference between home games and casino. And I think it scares them away the same way it scared away the old man who claimed that online was rigged for 20 years.
Oh my God.
Right?
Did you hear
like,
that? It just...
That guy doesn't play, but he still loses $1,000 a year online, right? But the thing is, if he didn't think it was rigged, he would lose $10,000 a year. So I guess it scares them away in that regard. Like their volume just gets drastically cut.
Yeah, that's been people. Every time you go to a live casino and play cash, you hear it. It's like it's a nonstop reoccurring thing. Live online is rigged. Club WPT is the rumors about the Club WPT RNG right now. It's like just like. Everybody,
they're getting fucked online. They're getting fucked online, but not the ways that they think they are. It's not the operator that's doing it. I can assure you. It's some kid in Uzbekistan in a basement that's like wired up a fucking bot farm to make sure that you can never win.
It's so funny because, you know, Justin and I were mainly online, so occasionally we go and play live, normally for a tournament series, and you just always hear the online is rigged comment at some point. And
again,
you watch some of these runouts and like some of these runouts don't, like I saw a runout. Okay, bad beat story. Flop Ace King versus nines, all in pre. Flop comes Queen Jack 10, and then run out comes Jack Jack. And the dude like throws up his hands, and I'm like, I told you guys, fucking live poker's rigged. It's like you see these runouts no matter where you play. You just see them more online. People just can't comprehend it.
It's the mind's inability to actually process variance, right? Like I just went through a recent downswing that was bigger than I could have fathomed at the stakes I was playing. And when I ran a variance calc on it, it was like 25% to happen. And like to me, it was impossible to happen. It's like I got set over set like 6 times in the course of a month, which is maybe 100 hours, 150 hours, you know? It was like, this shouldn't happen 6 times in a decade, the way live poker goes, you know? But you get these concentrations of, or these like patches of of variance just through randomness, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like you'll have these bouts of run good too, where it's like you're on the right side of set over set a bunch and you just don't remember it, or flush over flush, or
Yeah.
what have you. But online, it's so concentrated, right? Like to an untrained mind that isn't accustomed to dealing with variance at that sort of volume, when it happens to you a dozen times in a day where you played 5,000 hands, that feels really substantial. It doesn't track that it would take you a quarter of a year to play 5,000 hands live, you know? So it's like it doesn't really track that over the course of 3 or 4 months you see the same sort of beats in live, because if you spread it out over 3 or 4 months, that's like a couple times a month, maybe once or twice a week, something like
Right.
that. You know, it's like I can
Yeah.
handle that. I'm built for that. You know, once a week. Okay, yeah, you can put a beat on me once a week. I'll mentally recover. But like, if you're gonna do it to me once a fucking hour, I'm I'm good. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yep.
take me to the Bellagio where the dealers are 85 and we're only getting 12 hands an hour. Like, relax a little bit.
It's so funny because we got FanDuel now, so it's PokerStars FanDuel.
Yeah.
I hit a straight flush against quads. Like the first time this has actually ever happened to me in like some midnight tournament. And I'm like, that guy's never gonna play online poker again. he's
That's
he's
that.
like, it's fucking rigged.
Yep, that's that. It's all over for that guy. Can't blame him. He's
Bro,
better
like,
off.
What the fuck? He's better off,
Speaking of,
yeah.
speaking of variance, Galfon has a pretty new cool tool out there I saw. He has it only for cash games now, but he has a variance calculator. Finally,
I s-
someone decided to update the old Prime dope that's been around
Yeah,
since God knows how long.
yeah. I
Um,
saw him playing around building stuff. I think that's kind of like what we're all doing right now, is just like taking advantage of AI and building the tools that we've wanted to see for a long period of time. You know, there's already
mhm,
skeletons of a lot of what you want. So
mhm.
it's like I can't remember what I was. Oh, I was building a calculator for 3 card hold'em, which I didn't even know was a fucking game until like a week ago. But you use it's not pineapple. You don't discard. You keep all three. It's like super pineapple or some shit like that. Um, and so I wanted to build an equity calculator for this. And I just asked Claude, I was like, you know, this is the scope of the project. Do you want to start with taking the framework of an already existing equity calculator? And it's like, yep, already found the source code, the poker stove. We're good to go. We'll run 10,000 Monte Carlo sims and see if it produces what we'd expect, which would be like, you know, trips being in sequential order, like trip
Mhm.
aces down to trip deuces. And, you know, it came back correct. It was like, all right, let's build out the rest of the logic. And within like 4 hours, I just have an equity calc.
Right. Another variance-driven endeavor you've featured in is Heads Up against Nick Airball. Talk to us about that. That the way that got started. I'm sure a lot of people know, but a little backstory on how that got started and what that whole process slash journey was like.
Um, in hindsight, I'm very happy and thankful that it happened. During the time frame, it was incredibly stressful and felt like really unnecessary. Um, so basically, it was like on the back end of the HCL stuff. This was early 2023. He wanted to challenge me to Heads Up. It was really when he was at peak trying to fill Garrett's shoes. You
Hmm.
know, they were like 4 or 5 months removed from Jack 4 now. HCL is really trying to establish themselves as the number one stream and repair any brand rep that they might be suffering via the hands of Vertucci fucking existing in the world. And Garrett's still kind of, you know, saying his piece. And I, again, like, I wasn't quiet about any of that. We were doing the daily pod at that point. So, you know, we were the spot to tune in to for daily news. Clips were very easy to come across, and it was very easy to take shots across the bow to HCL anytime I deemed necessary. Which, for what it's worth, it didn't. That was never my intention at the start. Like, people don't know this, or maybe they do, I don't know. But when the Jack 4 thing happened, I was Vertucci's first phone call outside of Garrett. And like, we weren't like close by any stretch, but like, you know, he would just ask me for like consulting on certain things, and like he trusted my knowledge of like live streams and stuff like that. And so like I would just like for free just like consult him in spots like this. And when the Garrett hand happened, he called me, he asked me like how I would handle it, what kind of statement to put out, and I basically wrote their first public statement for him, almost verbatim. And I was, you know, friendly with Ryan at the time via Live at the Bike. We had always had an okay working relationship in spite of like him actually being the one that really fueled he kind of sparked the fire between me and Polk long time rivalry. There was a game that fell apart that he put together where every recreational pulled out, and I pulled out last minute, and the game collapsed. And he and Polk went on like Facebook Live and just solely put the blame on me, which was maddening. But like we had reconciled at that point, and you know we collaborated work wise and whatnot. So there was no bad blood between me and HCL at the time of Jack 4 happening. However, as I continued to speak out about their shortcomings in security, which were just facts, purely factual, and most were proven to be the truth from my vantage point after they did their own in-house audit or whatever. Like a lot of what came back in that report, it coincided with what I said was fucked up about their system to begin with. It turned into an us versus them somehow. And I think it was, again, the Vertucci influence on the way the business was run. Like, this is a family. He treated it very much like a mob type of hierarchy. And, you know, people there that, like, I'd known my entire career, like Billy McMahon, for example, so DJAF. I've known him since I moved to Vegas. We were always, like, good friends. He won't speak to me now. And it's, like, all as a byproduct of me just saying truthful things about the way that they were operating. Now, did it hurt their business? Maybe. Was it intended to hurt their business? Only if they're unwilling to do what's right by the community. Like, it wasn't an attack. It was just a PSA of sorts, where it's like, look, if we're going to gamble for millions of dollars, we need to have some security that we're not being cheated, that, you know, we're not going to get, like, you know, the same way that you should have some security that when you walk into a casino and you get paid out in cash, they're not fake bills. Like, you have to oversee this stuff as an operator, you know? So after months of kind of just shit talking back and forth via the podcast and Vertucci's podcast, Airball was like really feeling himself being the new Friday night guy, and he wanted to take on the world. And he was challenging all comers at 500, 1,000, minimum $1 million buy-in, blah, blah, blah. And eventually he reached out to Doug to try to orchestrate a heads-up match with me. Now, I was at PCA at the time, so this was like the end of January. And simultaneously, I was talking to Victoria Livschitz in the background to become CEO of what's now Octopi. So they're like offering this to me, and I just had never played heads up a single hand in my life outside of like games breaking in the casino. Never studied it, didn't really care to. I'm making a really good hourly in my regular game, and it just seemed annoying to me. So I was like, I'll think about it. Let's maybe plan something for early March, but you know, don't like pencil me in. Don't write it in ink. And as time passed, I had overlapped the academy with the dates that I had agreed to. I was like, I can't make it then, you know, kind of kicking the can down the road. Until one day he just showed up on Doug's podcast. And, you know, he's throwing out a lot of buzzwords, scammer,
I remember that.
con, whatever, right? Like as if this guy is able to determine who's able to teach poker or not. I mean, what a qualified source Airball must be, you know? This guy couldn't fucking get his name right on a quiz. Like, how is he gonna tell anybody like what good education looks like? So that bothered me. Not because words or name calling like hurts my feelings, but more so because like one thing I do, you know, I said earlier, like there's nothing on my resume I can really hang my hat on. I'm not like so good at any one thing that people would be like, wow, Berkey's the best at that. But I do feel like I've been in this very shady career path for 20 some odd years, and my integrity is still intact. And I think that's worth a lot. So when he attacked that, it was kind of like, all right, I'm not just going to take this lying down. Like, I'm just going to call a spade a spade. This guy fucking sucks. He's terrible at poker. If he wants to play me, I'll play him 5 days a week, 5 hours a day at the Bellagio if he wants to inconvenience himself and be here for that. And I'm sure there's a clip from Only Friends of me saying all this, where eventually we agreed on, I said I would play him every day for 30 days. And he wanted me to like travel back and forth to LA to do that. And I just like stood firm. I was like, buddy, you're the one talking shit. You want to come get the smoke, like by all means, rent a place in Vegas and like we can go battle every single day. I don't give a shit, but I'm not coming there. So it was a long back and forth. Poor Galfond got dragged into it. I still owe him a dinner for that one, at least.
What happened?
We couldn't settle on terms, and
Oh, okay.
Airball was just like continually running to Twitter trying to frame it as me ducking him, when in reality, like I just couldn't be bothered with him. And it was like, I don't care. I don't care about anything that you're saying. I don't care about the stakes. I don't care about the risk. I don't care about the fact that you want to play X amount of time heads up. All of this is suitable to me. I just don't want to travel and I don't want to be inconvenienced. That's it. And I shouldn't have to, because you're the one laying out the gauntlet. You're the one calling me a scammer. And if you want to settle this with a fist fight instead, like we could just do that, you know? Like this doesn't have to turn into $1 million fucking live streamed game for the, like, whatever, man. Like you want to get into the back alley and just like settle this like men, like by all means, let's do it. But I'm not going through some dog and pony show because you and Doug have an agenda.
Did it scare you at all that, like, I mean, Doug's a very, very good heads-up player. I think that's fair to say. Did it scare you at all that Doug was teaching Nick? I mean, I don't think...
No, that pissed me off.
It wouldn't scare me as much. It pissed you off?
It pissed me off. So the timeline of events where eventually, God bless him, Galfond was able to mediate the situation and we agreed on terms. And it got to the point where, like, Airball wouldn't even participate in the chat any longer. He removed himself and he put Lynn in as a proxy to like negotiate the terms moving forward, which is also fucking insane on so many levels. But whatever. It really spoke to his character, to say the least. So we end up landing on terms, and the day before, 2 days before the match was set to start, something, I don't remember what triggered it. Some shit talk maybe. Oh, I know what it was. Again, this is another mischaracterization that just drives me insane. And the receipts to this one are so wild. There's a Twitter thread that's probably like, I don't know, 20 tweets long with just receipts about how wrong Doug was about this and how he mischaracterized what I said, including like audio clips and DMs and everything else. But basically, like, there was a kid who got shot in the parking lot of the lodge back in 2022, maybe. I think it was, it might have been like actually like 2 weeks prior to Jack 4. So maybe like late 2022. Okay. And, you know, we covered it on the podcast, and it was after a high stakes live stream. And I said, like, you know, this is a very unfortunate event, but like some of this falls on the ownership of the lodge. If you're going to run and advertise a high profile game like this with a lot of fucking money, there's a lot of security protocols you're going to have to ensure in order to keep people safe. Valet, you know, boxes, things where they don't walk out of the place with $50K in cash on them, encouraging this type of behavior, you know, armed guards, all this other stuff.
I think that's a fair criticism from you, by the way.
Yeah, of course. It's just practical. As somebody who's lived in Vegas for a long time, like, regs just discuss amongst themselves best protocols very early in your career when you're walking around with your fucking bankroll in your pocket. You know, it's like always valet, always circle the block, always do these things, you know, it just kind of gets spread amongst, but Doug's an online guy, you know, he never really was in that world. So like, it's not that unreasonable that like it wasn't fully up to snuff, right? So he DMs me that day after seeing the pod and tells me that I'm wrong about a few things and airs his frustrations about why a lot of the other things couldn't be executed on. And I said, okay, no problem. I will redact and correct the 2 points that I was wrong about. I don't remember what they were off the top of my head now, but whatever. I made like 10 points and I was misled on 2 of them. I think one of them was that they accepted cryptocurrency and they didn't. But that was a byproduct of like them asking. I think Skull Mike reached out to me asking me to play, and I asked him if he could send crypto, and he said, or if I could send crypto, and he said he would arrange it. So I didn't realize he was doing me a favor. I thought that was just like protocol. Anyway, I redacted and corrected a couple of points, but like, you know, I stood 10 toes in the ground on the other points, and we just moved past it. So now I come to find out that the lodge rebuilt the entire set, restructured their entire property around this live stream game, and basically executed almost every single one of my suggestions.
Yeah.
So now, as the heads-up match is approaching, Doug took it upon himself to take this moment to dance on my grave and call me a scammer and a liar to double down on the airball thing. So he basically came out and said, like, 6 months ago, Berkey said a bunch of lies about my property, and that doesn't just affect me, it affects my employees, and, like, I care about basically the same Vertucci family bullshit. And, eventually was like, and that's why I'm now going to teach airball how to play heads up or whatever. And I'm just furious. I'm just, like, so annoyed because he's lying. And because now this is like another thing I have to consider. Whereas before I'm just playing against this ape who doesn't know shit about poker as far as I can tell. It's like, well, now somebody might actually tell him something important. Like, what if he remembers it? That would be a terrifying thing. Like, Jesus Christ, what if he actually uses one good size? I might have to like study a little bit more. So I was annoyed. Well, the next day, which was the day before we were set to play, he got a seat at Bellagio, and he comes in late. I'm already seated, and I'm in the second game. And if you walk into Bobby's room, basically there's a table directly in front of you to the right, directly in front of you to the left, and then a third table that's only used for mixed games, kind of like off in the distance. So I'm off to the left, and I'm in a corner, literally like can't move. There's a player and a table beside me that would block my path. And he comes in, and he just starts running his fucking mouth immediately, like saying, like, oh, you're such a little bitch, whose dick did you suck to get a buy-in today, blah, blah, blah. And, like, this stuff doesn't anger me. I truly was very calm in the moment, but I just thought to myself, I was like, we're going to play tomorrow, and I'm going to put the fucking fear of God in this guy right now. So I leap over the 7 seat completely, just hurdle him. And I run up onto him. He's sitting in like the 9. And I just start mouthing off, calling him a little bitch, asking him where his daddy Doug is and all this other stuff. And he stands up to like confront me. And it was at that point I realized he's like 6'5", which I didn't expect. So he kind of stands up, and I'm like,
he's tall.
You're still a fat piece of shit. And he kind of like tries to like nudge me off. And I kind of like just roll my shoulder. And I was ready to fucking go. I mean, I would never fought him there because, like, obviously it's MGM and I can't do anything to get banned.
I remember that
or anything
video.
like that.
I remember that video of him standing up on. There was a leaked video of that, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Marcus Gonzalez was filming from the 1 seat in our game. But like, yeah, it was just like I know I came across like really angry, but like I was very calm, cool, and collected in that moment. I was just like, I want to remind this guy that like this isn't just going to be a game of tiddlywinks where we're chatting it up and we're friendly over this 100 hours that we play. Like, I'm going to rip his fucking head off.
I wish it was streamed, dude. I'm so mad.
Yeah.
There's probably so many hands there that like, why did you guys do it so private?
Well, he wanted to stream, but I didn't because I knew that he was an idiot. Like, and this part of the negotiation, I forgot to tell you, of why it got delayed and also why Doug got brought into the fold is because he was insisting that Ishan got to sit behind him for the whole match. And Ishan is like not an idiot when it comes to poker, has played a bunch of heads up, and more importantly is like just there to record what's happening, So basically, I knew that if we played privately, first of all, I didn't want any of the spotlight to be shined on him. Like, I didn't want to platform this guy. Fuck him. He's not going to get good attention over this type of behavior. Like, nobody deserves that. But secondly, I didn't want him getting perfect information either.
Right.
I knew he couldn't relay a hand history. I was positive. Just positive. I know the type, man. I know the type who just makes shit up to make the hand sound better or worse in his own benefit. I just know that this guy's never relayed an accurate detail back to his friends in his life. So it's like, now that he has Doug on board, he wants to have a perfect observer record all the details and send them the hands. And I was like, fuck that. Absolutely not. Under no circumstance. And I got to tell you, I probably don't win $1 million if we do it on stream, because there were a lot of things that are basic theory principles that he just did not fucking understand that could have been corrected in one conversation. Right? Like, he just does not fundamentally understand how money is meant to be put into the pot. And so he drastically overinvested in some nodes and wildly wildly underinvested or overfolded in others.
Right.
And had he had real information for a lot of those spots, like any coach worth a grain of salt could have fixed it. And supposedly he spent $100K on coaching between like I guess he had like Frapp and Doug, and I'm sure that he was getting ranges from who ran Doug's ranges. I can't remember. They called them the Nassau ranges. But
The HRC can run fucking heads up. K?
yeah, wild.
They're
It's
calling
wild.
you a scammer? 100K for heads up?
And he didn't learn shit. I can tell you that by the end, this guy barely knew what proper flop sizing was, let alone frequencies. You know, like he truly, I can't express this enough. And I'm sure he's gotten better since then, but I cannot express to you enough how little he understood about poker theory, just as a whole. Like it was so abundantly clear. He's just operating off of observation over the course of many years of playing live.
Right.
And he's a ring player now transitioning to heads up. So he's just both too loose and too tight in just about every single node, you know?
How did you prepare for the match? Like, what did you do? Because this is your first heads up match, right? You're like, you're definitely a betting favorite, and like, I'm sure you felt like a favorite, but there still has to be a lot of pressure involved, right? Because it's like you're risking everything. We're in the sense of like, if you lose to Airball, then this is going to define your career for
sure.
your legacy. And if Airball loses to you, then it's like
whatever.
Or if you
He's
beat
just a
him, it's like
loudmouth.
Whatever. You just beat Nick Airball.
That's why it was
So you're
important to
risking your
maximize.
whole. Yeah, you're risking your entire reputation with this, and he's risking nothing.
Yeah,
So
that was definitely why it was so important for me to like do this behind closed doors, to do everything I could to win the million, because like it was important to maximize the spot. Because you know, maybe 25% of the time I do lose to him, and it may even only be small. I might only lose like 20K, but like that's the nature of heads up. I was at the time we had kind of brokered a deal with Ruse before they were purchased by GTO Wizard. So initially we were going to partner with them, and they were going to be our solver for Solve for Y. So I had early beta copies of Ruse, and I was basically just like running heads up with big blind ante ranges on Ruse. I was, you know, putting the sims in, studying that way, digging down into nodes, basically with what is now GTO Wizard. And I was using their trainer like just religiously. But I took a very broad stroke approach. So I had one session with KRAB. I expected to like, you know, pay for like 25 hours and really dig deep. We had one strategy session, and he's just like, I think that you have the perfect mindset for how this works. Like, get the broad strokes down and just like really hammer him where he's weak. And you're good enough at exploiting that like he just won't perform very well. And so like, yeah, I think like the study and the training was invaluable because I had never really gotten that granular in my study. You know, for like full ring live, you're not really digging that deeply into like very specific nodes like blind versus blind, 3-bet pot, river, SPR2 type of stuff. You're more so just like building out the broad strokes of like, okay, when do we use geosizing? When do we go less? When do we go greater? That type of stuff. And you kind of work the rest out because it's mostly going to be on the exploitative spectrum. You know, you're taking advantage of the fact that you're against Joe Plumber as opposed to rec number 3 or shit reg number 4, right? Like they're all gonna they're all gonna require a different menu of aggression and sizings and stuff like that. But with this, it was like I didn't want to be technical, so to speak, but I wanted to understand the deeper intricacies of each node, and I think I got there, you know, in a crash course kind of way relatively quickly. Kevin was invaluable to be able to send hand histories to in real time and like give feedback. This might be a pip too wide, this might be a pip too tight kind of stuff. But honestly, the biggest return on study I think that we got was I paid a team in like Sri Lanka off of Fiverr to go through like 800 hours of live streams that Airball had played on. Maybe it was less. It was definitely less. Maybe it was like 100 hours. But basically, we were able to get like a 10,000 hand sample, and we uploaded that to Hand to Note. And I had a couple of Poker Detox's engineers come through it and just look for easy anomalies that we could cling to. Like the first one that we got was that he had never overbet river with a bluff in 10,000 hands. It's like, that's impossible. You know, that's like 300 hours of live poker or whatever, and you just never overbet the river with a bluff. It's like, okay, that we can hang our hat on that one. And the unfortunate part was we got that data back the Monday after the first weekend, and I jumped out to a 350K lead going into the last 2 hours of the Sunday session, and a hand happened where through that pot I had sixes on like ace six deuce, and he c-bet into me like way too big, like B75 or something. I call, turn is like an offsuit 10, no flush draw, and he like bet 75 again with like 5 pots behind. And like usually I would raise, but he had this tendency of like when he doubled, he always tripled kind of thing. So I was like, well, I'm just gonna let him barrel again because he won't not bet like an ace on the river. And he won't not bet his bluff. So like I just like have a really easy spot. And the river's an offsuit king. I was like, oh, that's great. Like if he has ace king, like I stack him here for sure. And he just jams for 5x pot. And now I'm like, fuck me. Like I don't know if I can even bluff catch here anymore. Like what exactly is the bluff? Anyway, I end up like tanking for like 25 minutes and finally call, and he has queen jack. And had I had that data one day prior, I would have laughed my face off and just like turbo mucked, you know, and we probably would have ended the match in like 30 hours instead of 50.
Did he had backers for this match, or did he have people investing in him? Because I thought I heard a rumor that they were like, all right, you can't play Berkey heads up anymore or something.
That had to have happened. So his big thing that he was running his mouth about in public was that it was all his own money. But like as we know now, it's never been all Airball's money. Like Airball doesn't have money. I don't know where he gets funded by, but he's not an investment banker. He never was. He never made his own wealth. This isn't like, you know, he doesn't have 25 million sitting around that he's just dipping into for funsies on a Friday. Like he's exactly every other guy who shows up in high stakes live cash that has a fake story of how he got here because he thinks that they won't let him stay if he says that like I just get backed by this super wealthy Chinese expat or whatever the fuck it may be. Little does he know, like everyone thinks he's awful, so like he has a seat for life and he can just tell the truth now if he wants. But yeah, the rumor was that he had sold half himself to the HCL guys, and they had to have pulled the plug at $1 million because a couple of days prior when we were playing the Poker Go high stakes poker, he was drunk and he was challenging me to play 501k after the session off of the bet or off of the heads up match, and I happily said yes. I got us a table. I rushed to get chips, and his entourage escorted him away to dinner. So Lynn and Brown Bala wouldn't let him do it, and they took him away to dinner and got him drunker and put him to bed. But as of that night, he was willing to go like many millions deep into this heads up match. And 2 days later, when we put the final nail in the coffin, like he showed up the final day 165k away from losing. I think it was roughly that number. And he sat with like enough to cover me every single day. That day he just sat with the exact amount to hit $1 million. So I already knew going in, like I was licking my chops. I was like, this is it. And it's so
he
funny
conceded.
Because, and it's so funny because it's like 165k was I mean, we were playing 100k minimum buy-in, but like that's 400 big blinds. Like it shouldn't necessarily just, you know, scoot itself in the middle so quickly. It was so easy to get fucking stacks off of this guy. And it was also very easy to like get the pot super bloated and then blow him off of it later. So yeah, there was just like a lot. Like I talked to Doug a bit about it afterwards, and he was like, you know, kind of boasting about how hot I ran. And I was like, yeah, obviously I ran hot. We played for 50 hours and I won $1 million. But like, do you think that like my win rate is not double digits versus him? And he tried to like say that it's not. And I was just like, buddy, you of all people, the guy coaching him, should understand that this guy is losing to like a 50 cent a dollar online heads up player who like puts in a lot of work. and losing a lot.
He's probably getting crushed by that guy, actually.
Crushed. And the only thing that could allow Airball to make it up is that, like, it's 300 big blind poker minimum. There's an ante. So, like, you know, variance can swing really, really hard in both directions. But it's like, I'm really, really well conditioned to that. Like, that's my game to begin with. And if he's going to try to, like, out big pot me, that's just not going to work very well, you know?
Can we rewind here with the Doug, like, being like, I'm going to coach Nick because Matt did insulted my business. And this is not like, I'm not trying to completely just dig at Doug here. I don't really have a side, I guess. But Doug, I don't really know the story, but what it seems to happen a lot is that, like, someone will criticize Doug in a certain way and he'll get very hypersensitive and take it very personal. So what I imagine happening is you were kind of covering a situation on your podcast that you say, okay, this probably happened because of X, Y, and Z, and these are sort of the solutions to fix that. For whatever reason, it seems like when someone has any sort of criticism towards him or like his company, it's so personal. Like, you attacked me, you attacked my family, my business, when oftentimes it's really not the case.
Well, it's just a projection, right? Because that's his business, is attacking people personally. So I think that, like, he's just seeing it through the lens through which he views it to begin with. And, like, as much as I hate Doug and as little, as much bad blood as there is between us, like, I didn't take the opportunity to dunk on him over the coin flex thing. Like, I was one of the few people who wasn't talking about that every single day. And to me, it wasn't even like, I didn't even leave it alone because I didn't think it was the story. I did. We talked about it some. I left it alone because, like, it was such low-hanging fruit. It was so beneath me to make fun of. You know? It was like everybody wanted to see this be the final comeuppance for me, where it's like, this is where you get to dance on Doug's grave. You know, this is where you get to point out that he's a hypocrite. And from my vantage point, it was just like, why? Just like, why bother? He's going to take it and try to spin it as best he can, and we're going to watch him flounder as he does. And that's really the big thing with Doug. The whole reason why the airball thing went so heavily against him, you know, if you remember that period of time where he got dragged pretty hard in spaces and Galfon finally felt the need to kind of stand up to him in his own capacity and all this other stuff. The reason why it went so poorly for him is because he was so, like, arrogantly in the wrong and thought that he was more likable than the people he was in the wrong against. So, like, when he came out and said that, like, I trashed his business and he's trying to frame me as, like, the bad guy in that particular instance, he didn't take inventory of, he didn't read the room very well, you know? He didn't understand that, like, everybody was on my side of the airball situation and that this was only going to backfire in some capacity. So now when I come firing receipts and, you know, it's like a 10 tweet thread where I'm just showing him over and over and over again how hypocritical he is, and he's unresponsive to that type of stuff, or he tries to move the goalpost in some sort of capacity because that's the thing that he's best at. The public just isn't letting it fly, and then that continually cascaded into spaces where, you know, Airball's entire camp just keeps embarrassing themselves and keeps fabricating things that aren't true or stretching truths and making them look worse than they are. And, you know, now Doug's coming in out of the blue, and it's like, Charlie Carroll is not a likable person, and Doug made him likable and easy to empathize with whenever he came in.
It's funny you say that. Charlie Carroll is like, can be agonizing to listen to. Although he's just very anyway, go on. But you're right, he did. Doug just attacked him for no reason on YouTube for that, and then called him a pedophile. He made a YouTube video basically saying he's a pedophile or something.
I mean, look, like, Charlie put himself in a position to be made fun of. The problem is that the way Doug did it was so disingenuous to the actual message that Charlie was putting out there, and it was so inauthentic, right? It's like when you have this belief that the audience is too dumb to notice what you're doing, and you can get away with murder. It will eventually bite you in the ass. And for a long time, Doug was right. The audience was too dumb to see what he was doing, and he did get away with murder. But, like, with the Charlie thing, all it took was Charlie coming forward and saying, like, I was a victim of pedophilia. That's all it took. And then suddenly everything kind of calmed down. It was like, we're talking about a very serious subject here that Doug is
Mm-hmm.
just like making fun of. And when
Right.
given the opportunity to walk it back, he's doubling down.
Right.
And it was like, at that point, nobody is going to like sympathize or side with you. You're too toxic, you know, like,
Mm-hmm.
and that was what happened. He had this like culmination where every single time that he took a liberty at someone else's expense kind of came back to bite him, you know, and he recovered just fine, as someone in his position does, because at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal. He's calling us shit regs and a bunch of other stuff, and like, you know, to some degree we probably all are. But it doesn't make him any less of an asshole.
I think that I don't know if Doug's an asshole or not. I can't. I mean, some of his content has been ruthless. I've enjoyed a lot of his content, though, to be honest. Um, but I remember watching a live from him not too long ago, and like he's still kind of going after Galfon. Like, oh, Galfon's this
Yeah.
bad guy for going after me, and Galfon did it because he has a competing brand in the space, and I think that's so false. Phil Galfon would not like attack somebody because they have I don't know
just doesn't
why he
take
can't
those
see
kind of
past
risks.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Phil just never would take those types of brand risks, right? Like if he spoke up on something, it's because he has conviction in it, and
Right.
it's not that he can't see past it. It's it strategically doesn't make sense for him to see past it. Like him painting Phil as some sort of enemy, and more importantly as like some sort of spineless person who only stands up for things that are you know, kind of like acceptable to stand up for, or fall in favor of the crowd. Like Doug might even just be right on some of those points, but the problem is what you're pointing out is like how petty and vindictive he is with the way that it's portrayed, and it's always going to be in line with his best benefit, right? Like it's always going to be in line with either brand repair on his own accord, or bolstering his company, or improving his own status in whatever situation it is. You know, it's like there's just no getting around how calculated he is with social engineering, and he's both better and worse because of it.
So you beat Airball in your heads up match. Any itch to get back into the heads up arena, or you're done taking your win and leaving?
I mean, I'll always play somebody that I think is like either fun or level with me. Like I played Blez on High Stakes Duel, and I spotted him around a PLO. I don't play PLO at all, and he's by all accounts a savant. That was a lot of fun. Day one, I broke dead even. I think I won like 20,000 playing PLO maybe, and lost like 30,000 playing Hold'em, or vice versa. Day two, we started with Hold'em, and he came out just deck smashing him in the face. I was down like 150 as we were going into the break, and I managed to negotiate with him to forego the PLO and just keep playing Hold'em. I paid a 15K penalty to him, and I think that he was like, I think he was feeling himself a little bit in the Hold'em, so he kind of bit. I ended up winning 380K, I think, in the next 3 hours, and taking home the belt after that one. So like stuff like that to me is fun. Like, you know, Jared doesn't play at all by the book. It's not some like knock him down, drag him out like fight where we're just trading back and forth 5 big blinds over and over again. That's, I guess, what doesn't interest me. Is I don't want to play a technician, you know, because I know I'm not that well studied in heads up, and I don't want to like grind it out at a snail's pace. I like throwing the haymakers back and forth, you know, like you can only imagine how many times we played. I think we were playing 200, 400. So you can imagine how many like 150K pots we played over the course of that next 3 hours for me to win almost 600 or 550K swing, whatever it was.
Yeah. Do you have any, like, I know NBC has their heads up thing. Did they send an invite out to you? Do you have any interest on maybe coming on to that?
I played last year's. I passed on the invite this year. I should have played it, I think, because it's fun. But we had a really good game that week, and I didn't want to miss. Which, in hindsight, I'm glad I didn't. I won like second place money, playing cash. But that you just have to be willing to just like put your ego and pride aside. And it's not about playing well at all. It's literally you're playing 15-minute rounds where the blinds double. I mean, it's like playing a bar home game. You know, the structure is like nothing you've ever seen. I drew Big Say in round 1 last year, Richard Seymour, and Richard, by all accounts, is like a very tough amateur. Like he studies with Kuhn, and like he's a sharp guy. So this is like no slight against him, but it's like I would think that like in a well structured heads up match, I would probably have a slight edge. He just had the deck in his favor for 45 minutes, and the next thing I know, we're both 20 blinds effective, and I'm losing ace jack to jacks, and we move on. And it's like that just leaves a sour taste in my mouth because I very rarely am in a spot where I'm like playing for the trophy.
Yeah.
And if you're playing for monetary reasons, like if you're not playing for pride, you're not playing for the trophy, you're not playing for ego, you're playing just for money, it becomes really difficult to like want to carve time and energy out for something where like your ROI is like 1 or 2%. And maybe it's a little bit higher than that because the field was soft, but like how high could it possibly be when you're just flipping coins?
Yeah.
Matt, do you remember? Sorry, this is jumping way back. Do you remember that tweet from Charlie at Doug after all of this spaces thing the spaces thing happened? Do you remember that tweet from Charlie where he was like, Doug, you think that I hate you, but I actually love you. And like was talking about how much he loves stuff. Wasn't that the weirdest fucking tweet? Like I think I was cringing reading that. I'm like, why are we?
Yeah, I think
I don't
that's the
know.
kind of stuff. Like I don't know Charlie that well, and when I say that he's difficult to like, I think that's the kind of stuff that I'm more so pointing at. It's not that I don't believe him. I mean, it's part that I don't believe him, but it's more so that like even if what he's saying is true, it's such virtue signaling, you know?
Right. Exactly.
Like to me, like be who you are, be authentically yourself. But when it's performative, I think that you leave a sour taste in people's mouth, and I think that's the thing that frustrates me the most about the way people perceive me, and I do think that it probably has a lot of influence from just spatting with Doug for so many years in the public realm. But I think people perceive me as being inauthentically combative, or they think that I'm very inauthentic in being like a pseudo intellectual, or in the way that I use my vocabulary, or the way that I choose to speak, or what have you. And it's like it's ironic because I'll get like criticism for using too technical of terms when I'm describing something, and then I'll also get criticism for talking like I'm in a high school locker room, like all in the same sentence. It's like, well, what is it? Like, I'm not allowed to be an everyman. I'm not allowed to be an intellectual. I'm not allowed. Like, what do you guys want me to be? Because as far as I'm concerned, I've just always tried to remain true to myself. Like, this is who I always was my entire life. It's like, I grew up around athletes, so I had to dumb it down a lot. But I had a lot of very brilliant friends that, I was lucky enough to have very intellectual conversations with. I don't know. Maybe I'm not always that privy to who my audience is, or I'm not paying close enough attention to it. But I assure you, it's not like as intentional as people believe it to be. I'm not out there trying to piss people off.
Yeah, I wonder what it is though, because from my opinion, you don't come off as disingenuine. I think you can come off as East Coast and harsh. I think people in New Jersey are gonna understand you a lot more than people from California, just
100%.
because it's like you're kind of. Yeah, I grew up around people like you, and that's not in a bad way, but like the uncle
No.
when you go to the Italian
biggest
place.
compliment. I do not fit in here, man. I say this all the time. Like East Coast people, Northeast people, whatever you want to refer to it as, they are kind but not nice.
Right.
And what I mean by that is like they will help a neighbor in a time of need, and they'll curse them out in the process. Like they're very to the point. They're very blunt about it. They show affection by talking shit. Like that is the Northeast East Coast mantra. And with all that I am, that's authentically who I am. The West Coast is the exact opposite. They're a bunch of fake backstabbers who are nice but not kind. They will say the most generous things to your face and mean absolutely none of it, and they wouldn't piss on a fire to put it out if you were engulfed, you know? So it's like it's two totally different worlds. And you're right, man. Way more of the poker community is just made up of these highbrow, nice but not kind type of people who are trying to put on some sort of front for the world to see and have no interest in bettering society or their fellow man, I think.
So many characters in the poker community now, though. It's like there's so many different personalities, and it's like how do these people mesh together? I don't know what it is, but a lot of times you see like athletes or like professional football players, they all tend to like act alike to a degree and like mesh. And then the poker community is so weird because you could have a Charlie Carroll and a Doug Polk, and two are completely opposite figures in the poker community. And you to be honest, like, and yeah, I mean, I don't want to hate on Charlie too much. Like, I don't think that's the goal. I think he actually does have a good heart, but I think that the disingenuine sort of like love bombing really rubs me the wrong way. And
yeah, very East Coast of you.
Yeah, but I'm like a huge Phil Galfond fan. That's to me like genuine, like soft kindness to a degree.
Yeah, yeah.
You and Phil Galfond are completely different people. You're like more harsh, more brash. Phil's like soft and very well spoken. And he seems to be that. He's like that one guy that nobody can hate. And so it's weird to watch like a live stream where Doug is like hating on the one guy that like nobody ever has hated on. Like no one says they hate Phil Galfond. There's no reason to. Like, there's a reason to hate Doug. There's a reason to hate
right.
you. But
and I think everybody comes with like that sort of balance, right? Like if you get to know Farrah and I are a lot more like than Phil and I. And I don't mean that in the sense of like Phil and I disagree on things. I think from a principle standpoint, Phil and I are probably very identical. But I mean, like, Farrah is very brash. She's very protective of Phil. She's very outspoken. She's very to the point and matter of fact. And, like, that plays really well off of Phil's persona. So, like, nobody's asking him to be those things. He's just found that compliment in his life, you know? And I tend to surround myself with a lot of that, like, more softer people who are, like, a Chewy type, for instance. Chewy's so authentic. Like, that's, I think, the big difference between, like, Chewy and Charlie. They might believe the same things, but Chewy presents them in such an authentic way, nobody could ever dislike it, right? And he's so unapologetic about it. Whereas, like, the way that Charlie presents it does feel like it's almost trying to be a means to an end in some regard, right? Like, trying to either manipulate his persona or the way that he's viewed or a specific situation where he's trying to garner favor and have the pitchforks turned on somebody else type of thing. And in a lot of ways, that's exactly what Doug does. He just does it with more meanness than kindness.
That's a really good way to put it. Then you think about it.
Tell us about your Only Friends pod. That came to an end. We might be seeing a new version of it soon.
It's possible. We just very recently settled a lawsuit with my former partner, Christian. So it was like a confluence of events that kind of brought it to an end. I was a little bit burnt out after 3 years of doing it every single day, although that played very little into it, to be honest. Like, I still enjoyed it. And I think people think that it's really hard to do an hour-long podcast 5 days a week. It's really not. You know, it just became routine. There's always something to talk about. You're there with your friends. You bring in guests. Like, it was very doable. That was not the issue. But we were renting a space that we had run the academy out of and used as a studio that was being sold last April. There was nothing we could do about it except buy it, which I wasn't about to do. So we were losing our studio. We were recently at that time served with a lawsuit from Christian. And those things, like, culminating together kind of forced me to just, like, freeze all projects. And maybe this was, like, a bit spiteful from my perspective, but, like, I already felt like I was working for free because every dollar that we made in the company, I was pouring back into it to try to grow it. So I never took a salary. If anything, like, the company owes me money for, like, startup costs and shit like that. I wasn't about to continue down that path for something that I was being sued over, right? So if there was a risk of like, me losing a lawsuit in court and having to sign over a chunk of this thing that I've been working diligently on. Like, I'd rather just take a break, you know? So I basically was like, well, we're losing the studio anyway. We're not going to be able to run academies. I'm exhausted and we're being sued. Who knows how long we're going to have to fight this for? It seems like a good time as any to wrap things.
Right.
So we decided to stick a pin in it, called it quits last April. I honestly had no intentions of bringing it back. But now that we've settled the suit and I have full ownership of everything again, I mean, look, there's been a half dozen times over the last year where it was like, God, I wish we had the podcast right now. Like, this would be so much fun to just like shoot the shit over. But I think my big thing now is that, like, I don't really want to waste my time doing things that aren't helpful to me in some sort of capacity. So whether that's pursuit of monetary gain, or pursuit of excellence in another realm, or pursuit of pivoting off of poker in some sort of capacity, those would be like the big motivating factors for me to bring it back. And I haven't really checked those boxes yet. But what you're alluding to is we had been kicking around the idea of bringing it back every time a new news story broke. And we're like, God, we need to have the podcast. Like, this is silly. So we had workshopped some names, and Uncapped was actually the one we landed on. So that's how we actually met. I reached out to you guys and was like, hey, I don't know if this is going to be a thing, but we were kind of considering a podcast named Uncapped. Would you guys change your name at all? But luckily, like, shortly thereafter, the lawsuit got settled, so it wasn't an issue anymore.
So you're okay. That's good. It
By the
worked
way,
out.
I have a ton of like branding stuff if you want it. Like, I got images, I got logos, whatever you need.
Yeah,
Oh,
just shoot it over.
We'll take it. Justin and I. So when you DM'd us, so what's funny, that Twitter account was like 2-3 days, maybe not even a week old, because we hadn't made the YouTube channel. We didn't even have any social media. Hadn't really put much effort into the Twitter either, honestly. And we just get this DM. Like, Matt Berkey. I'm like, Justin, this
We
is
have like
Matt
3
Berkey.
followers.
We have like, maybe 2 followers. I'm like,
Well, you guys had just followed me, and I was like, son of a bitch.
I was just
lost our
going on Twitter,
name.
like, following all the poker people, just trying to, get on feeds and shit. And you come to us and I'm like, Justin, what the fuck are we gonna change your name to? So we're like trying to brainstorm names using AI. We didn't really like anything, like, because we liked Uncapped because it feels like you can talk about anything on here, right?
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah.
There's no subject is like you can't touch. And I'm like, Justin, we might just have to do the Mike and I can just call ourselves the Capped Podcast and just cross out the un.
That'd be funny,
that'd-
actually.
So, and then, eventually you sent us a message a couple weeks later. We're like, oh, no, don't worry about it. We're pivoting.
It's such a
I'm like,
relief.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a real big relief because Justin and I really couldn't think of like any great names that we like.
If I knew
really
your
liked,
plan was to just cross out the un and go with capped, I think I would have held your feet to it. I think that's a good idea.
So quick fun fact. We won't hold you for too much longer because we've held you for a long time. But you could just talk for hours. We could hold you all day. This Matt's first live score. He won.
Seneca Niagara.
Yeah, Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
First for 3,400.
Yeah, R.I.P. Seneca Niagara. I think they closed that room since COVID. But yeah, those are my old stomping grounds. I played all the Seneca casinos. Irving was like an hour away, Silver Creek. It was a bingo hall / card room. Seneca Niagara was like 90 minutes from Erie, where I was at college. And then Seneca Allegheny was like the place I played the most amount of my volume. It was about an hour drive.
Interesting. From Pittsburgh? Or from where you were
Well, I was
college?
staying. I was in college in Erie, PA. So
Okay.
everything was like from Pittsburgh is probably like closer to 3-4 hours.
Yeah. Cool, man. One of these days, you're perfect for this, but so one of these days we got to have a podcast with like multiple people and just talk shit because this podcast has been too we're very positive and we hear people's stories, but we need like a toxic podcast because there's a lot of toxicity in the poker world where people just need to let their frustrations out.
You just got to get Dentali on here. You'll be good.
We'll have you and Doug. We'll have like the feud on here.
We won't tell you guys that the other one's coming on either. It'll be great.
Him
Yeah,
and I actually
awesome.
did
So,
one podcast together during COVID, and it was shockingly amicable.
Shockingly.
Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you coming on, talking to us, sharing your story.
Yeah, no
Justin,
problem.
anything to wrap up?
I think that's good, man. I think it was a lot of fun. Thank you for coming on. It really means a lot to us, Matt.
Yeah, you got it. No problem.
Thank you.